board meeting. Will you please rise to the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Being recorded. Yeah. We also looking for my baby. It was part of the special. So you want me to read it for you? If you could, this sure. Yeah, because I don't see it. Yes, it's a really short one. So at this time, the board may address, any person may address the board on the items, anything that's under their jurisdiction listed on this agenda or not pursuant to the Brown Act. The board will take no action or have discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda, except as authorized by law. The board may ask clarifying questions or make statements regarding the input when all speakers have concluded. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes per individual for a total of no longer than 20 minutes per topic. Speakers shall state their first and last name at the start of their input. The speaker shall not be interrupted by either the public or the board, except reminders to adhere to the board policy on public comment. While providing input regarding employees, policies, procedures, services, or actions, the public shall refrain from using personal identifying information. In the case of public criticism of district employees, the board president or school administrator shall inform the complainant of the appropriate complaint procedure. Do I have any public comment? Okay. Okay, I accidentally did jump one. We're going to report of action taken in closed session. The board met in closed session. Conference with labor negotiator, name of agency negotiator, Paula White, employee organization, California School Employee Association, chapter 815. No action was taken. Conference with labor negotiation with unrepresented groups. No action was taken. However, they did that a board member be present when they are negotiating, and Scott McMillan has stepped up and taken that position. Public employee discipline and dismissal. There was a resolution to release an employee who was a probationary employee. Resolution number 101250. Motion was made by Timothy and it was seconded by Scott. That was the employee number. So it was resolution 2022-2306. Okay, I have the wrong one in there. And then no, that's okay. And then you read the employee number. So okay. Yep. Okay. And that was a 4-1 with Timothy, Scott, Christy, and myself voting for, and with one absent. Okay, moving on to information and discussion items. Annually. Oh, I'm jumping around. I'm sorry. Personnel assignment. Okay. Personnel assignment. Employee number 101006 reduces position number 6 of a 1.0 full-time employee elementary teacher at Mark Twain to a 0.40 full-time elementary teacher job share MNT at Mark Twain effective January 3rd. Employee number 101260 accepts positions number 65, 6.5 hour paraeducator at Mark Twain effective January 3rd, 2023. Employee number 101262 accepts position number 106, 6.0 hour paraeducator at Mark Twain effective December 12th, 2022. Employee 100128 accepts
certificated substitute employee position as Title I teacher for Copper, effective January 3rd, 2023. Employee number 101239 accepts certificated substitute employee position as 0.60 full-time employee elementary teacher job share position number 6, W, TH, and F at Mark Twain, effective January 3rd, 2023. The motion was made. Let's see here. Personnel, I'm sorry, the motion was made by Timothy, seconded by Scott, with a 4-1, 4 of us present with 1 absent. Okay, now on to information and discussion items. Annual municipal advisor notification pursuant to Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board Rule G-10 on investor and municipal advisory client education protection. Municipal advisors are annually required to provide certain written information to their municipal entity and obligated person clients, which includes the following. East Shore Consulting LLC is currently registered as a municipal advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. Within the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board MSRB website at www.msrb.org. They've also got an HTTP of https://eBoard-solutions.com/SU/CDELZ-KSNUT1MSW FMJ EXCBQ. And you may obtain the municipal advisory client brochure that is posted on the MSRB website. The brochure describes the protections that may be provided by the MSRB rules, along with how to file a complaint with financial regulatory authorities.
And Michael Riemenschneider is here to answer any obscure questions you might have, but this is just an annual notice that he is required and his company is required to provide to us because of the service that they're getting.
And SEC says we have to do it, so we have to do it. I'm sorry, I didn't. That was the reading was eloquent and perfect. So. It was a great introduction too, right, Scott?
So you get to go to every district to.
No, this is just coincidental, and I think that we like to be encourage over disclosure. Typically, this is not something that always has to be, read at a board meeting, but happy to have it done and on the record.
Thank you. D, review Measure E results. Please accept report from East Shore Consulting regarding Measure E results and implications of the election.
I can just stand up here. I think Sam's going to share the presentation on the screen for people in the room, and then that way also anybody online can watch me go through it as well. I have some notes here on my printed copies. I might look at them occasionally. I apologize if I'm focusing on different things at the same time. But again, my name is Michael Riemenschneider. My company's called East Shore Consulting. We've had the honor, the privilege to work with Paula for years, decades at this point, and we work with Mark Twain for the better part of 2 years. What apart from Measure E and above and beyond, stepping back from Measure E, what we help you do, I think, is to go through a facility planning process. We are happy to have been a part of that team. Paula, kudos to you. Board, kudos for moving that forward, even though we didn't quite get there on Measure E. Obviously, Measure E was a major part of that facility planning process, but it wasn't the only part of that facility planning process. In fact, again, like you guys did in December, kudos to moving forward on more facility projects that can be afforded within the funds that you have on hand, and then also be in a position to get that much more in state matching funds. Sam, if you'd go to the next slide real quick. So again, like I say, robust process to evaluate your needs. We'll kind of touch upon most of this stuff throughout the rest of the presentation. I'll try to be as brief as possible so that you guys can move on to other things and hopefully get home at a reasonable hour this evening. But Persinger Architects on the team did a great job. Alexis and Avery and a bunch of their folks, they walked the campus. They gave you a sense of how many millions, tens of millions of dollars are needed in improvements to and repairs to both campuses, both Copper and Mark Twain here. And then I think Alexis, to his credit, with Paula and your support, Samantha, really led the charge in kind of communicating that to the different school communities. I thought that was still a very effective way to get feedback and share more message, share more sense with the broader community about what needs are on both campuses. You also, and this is something that a lot of districts, even if they have a needs assessment, don't do. So kudos to making sure this happened as well. You went through and evaluated and rigorously pursued and are pursuing as much state aid, state matching funds. The state has a facility program that it provides a match for local contributions for certain facility needs once the district has eligibility. Mark Twain Elementary School District has some decent amount of eligibility on both campuses. And so we are chasing that money down and strategically pursuing it so that in even without a bond, with the money that you guys put in, that you have on hand and you put it into the TK facilities in the next couple of years, that ought to put you in a position where you get that much more reimbursement funds back from the state in 3, 4, or 5 years to do that much more modernization and repairs and improvements to campus, again, even without having your community say yes to a bond. There was extensive community engagement and feedback. We did the survey with EMC Research. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And again, in July, with Christy calling for some flexibility and timing with certain folks at the county, we were able to still call the election in July of last year. Measure A was put on the ballot, $9.3 million bond on the November 8th ballot. And this, I'm going to get into this in more detail here in subsequent slides, but you guys were in this region in the Sierras certainly not alone. In fact, you arguably came closer than any other like demographic in the Sierras to getting that 55%. There's a kind of statewide policy conversation that we're trying to help spearhead that hopefully will provide service and provide some equity for the kids, even in a community where it's challenging politically to get a bond approved, get a tax measure approved. But we'll talk more about that one. No other bonds in the Sierras, no other school bonds in the Sierras were approved last November, and none have been approved since 2018 in the Sierras. So it's a rough region, and there's some potentially policy issues that may make sense to pursue as we move forward in coming months and years. There's a brief analysis, the results, some topics to consider. And then again, you guys did, and you already are taking many of the next steps that I would certainly recommend. I'm proud of the fact that you guys are taking those next steps for facilities improvements on both these campuses. But there are a few more that I'd kind of maybe like to suggest or at least make you aware of. That might be helpful as you consider how to proceed from here. If you could go to the next slide, Samantha. So that's a brief, and literally this is a copy and paste with pens updated from the highlights of the survey that was done by EMC. I think they presented in May, I want to say, late May, maybe June. People in your community and voters do seem to have strong impressions of both campuses. They believe in the value of maintaining high quality schools across the board. They even see the need to potentially pay for those things. Although if you ask the question a little bit different way, they are hesitant to pay for anything in additional taxes. This is a consistent theme throughout all American politics. People both want to have the good public good, but then have some reticence towards actually increasing taxes to pay for that. It's just a kind of duality that we all have to some degree on our minds. But that's just a particular reality, and it's particularly worthwhile for us to think about that in this context right here for Mark Twain. Support, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in just a second here. Support was above the 55% threshold, at least within the survey sample. Mind you, the survey sample had almost 6% margin of error, plus or minus. It also had different moments where the yes/no question was asked, the different benchmarks we call them in survey lingo. I'll talk more about that in just a second. The basic repairs to roofs, HVAC, windows, plumbing, safety upgrades, those were the things that were most strongly supported. That's the core of what you guys are trying to do, so that matches well. And informational statements kind of describing those sorts of improvements more, going into more detail, providing more kind of narrative background, more story of the company. Those they were something that people agreed with, but interesting enough, they didn't push people to change their mind and how they vote. In fact, they maybe even took a little bit away from the knee-jerk reaction saying yes. And again, there was vulnerability to people saying, okay, taxes are already too high, gas prices are too high, the economy, we're not sure about the economy. And as soon as you make a very basic statement, support dropped by quite a bit. And just to get into a little bit more detail, what that basically meant was we have 3 different benchmarks on the survey. And surveys are structured, remember, they have like warm-up questions. First 8, 9, 10 questions are kind of warm-up questions. What do you generally feel about the state of the economy? What do you generally feel about the state of the district? And then we cold-blooded on the front end, ask a initial benchmark, 8, 9, 10, 11th question in, where you actually read the ballot language, 75 words, and ask people, will they vote yes or will they vote no? And then you go through and you list out the projects and kind of simple short terms. And then you also provide the statements about the projects and the benefits they have as kind of positive reinforcement of why this kind of makes sense. Those 2 sets of questions, those 2 brackets of questions come. And then we ask again, will people vote yes or no to the ballot measure itself? And then we have one very, very brief 2-sentence. These are reasons why maybe you don't want to vote yes. And then you ask the question again, would you vote yes or no? And this was interesting. I was digging through this a little bit because, and you'll see the next slide in just a second, and I'm sure you guys have already looked at this, but I wanted to digest, because I remembered, okay, the knee jerk was really, really strong support. And I was really surprised by that, 65%. That we're just shy of 65%. And that's a very strong knee jerk reaction in favor. And then interesting enough, most of the time when you do these surveys, you have the projects, you have the positive statements reinforcing the projects, providing narrative and story about the project. And then you ask the question again. Generally what happens is you go from a base initial benchmark, they call it, to the post benchmark to final benchmark. And that post benchmark, the second time you ask it, generally is a tracking up, because people have kind of come to appreciate what you're thinking about doing with the bond. They've come to think about that more, and they get more excited. And you did have people say they strongly agreed with many of the statements and were very supportive of the different projects, but actually support traced down in this survey result, not overwhelmingly 65 to 61%, which is kind of within the margin of error. But then you ask again the opposition, the post opposition statement, the post concerns, and why you maybe don't want to vote yes on a bond, and the support went down to right at 55%. And that's actually real close to kind of where we ended up landing. But then I went even farther And I remember Jessica Polsky, she was the MC person. I asked her for the crosstabs, and particularly crosstabs based on geography, based on Angels Camp or Copper. And basically the one telling one within it was that within Angels Camp, support actually started lower than in the rest. So the knee jerk wasn't quite as strong. And then it actually trailed from like mid to high 60s down to below 55% outside of Angels Camp. Angels Camp proper stayed low 60s and high 50s. Like there was very little variance there. So it's just to say that there's something within a given portion of the population outside of Angels Camp proper that either has a positive reaction initially, it definitely wants to support the schools, but has more potential issues that they could think of to actually end up voting no. And that's just something to, as we move forward, to think about as far as additional outreach to reach out to the folks, particularly in Copper, to try to inform them more and make that more consistent, more steady the whole way through, despite whatever else is going on in the background. And if you look at the next slide, Sam, you can actually see how it bore out. So yeah, this one. Just shy of 53.6%. I think it was what, Paula, 150 votes, 100, yeah,
No.
69, excuse me.
69 votes.
and then you see you had a sizable outright majority. What's interesting too is that of the just over 7,000 total voters, you actually had almost 65% show up, which for a gubernatorial, kind of not so sexy gubernatorial election. I mean, I don't know what you feel about Gavin Newsom, but you know, it wasn't a particularly low or suppressed turnout. I mean, in a presidential November election, might the turnout be higher? Yeah, probably 70-75%. But you weren't down in 50 or low 50s or high 40%, which other places actually had that happen in the last November's election. But what's interesting about this one is, you know, you can see within the Angels Camp proper, or as far as I could tell, they didn't have a good map on the county website that was particularly perfect for this one. But this is me kind of assigning labels because the precincts are random maps, since I'm working with the precincts on their maps and then kind of having to overlay the places that were in Angels Camp proper ended up that much higher. And kind of, I mean, I don't know where this precinct 210 is with 6 voters. That was very, very solidly supported. But then there's even in Copperopolis, as far as I could tell, kind of Copperopolis proper was in the low 50s. And then there was the kind of the larger area and the west of the district, I believe, that surrounding Copperopolis, that was, I mean, it's a smaller voter population, but noticeably lower support levels there. So again, kind of the survey results, and as you look at the crosstabs, that this is kind of that bearing itself out. If you go to the next one, Sam. So stepping back, there have been bond elections and election days that have been incredibly overwhelmingly supportive. I mean, Barack Obama, November 2008 was I think they're out of 100, there maybe 2 lost that particular day, just because he both turned out additional young people and turned out additional Democrats that made the percentage support level for bonds, average support level for bonds, just go through the roof. Whatever the overall demographics within a specific community, specific school district might be, this was not that day by any means. It wasn't the worst election that we've had in the past 20 years. Was March of 2020. It wasn't as bad as that. That was down in the 35-40% success rate for school bonds. But right here, it's right around 70%. So just know that the other bit to know, and I already made reference to the fact that no bonds have been approved in the Sierras in the last 4 election cycles. You can see that right here, this bar chart. There are other places that that's not the case. There are huge regional differences. On the coast, San Mateo County, 100%, Sonoma County, 100%, LA County, which actually has a larger kind of mix of different districts, and a lot of the Antelope Valley districts that are kind of more conservative, lean more conservative, still were successful. There's something underlying what's going on in the Sierras and the kind of voter attitudes right now that's chipping away enough support to drop from, you know, high 50s to low 50s, which it results in winning being swapped to a loser. What's interesting though, within the Sierras, if you look at it, I think there were 8 in the Sierras. You and Lake Tahoe Unified were the only 2 that were even close. Lake Tahoe Unified is like 3-1 Democrats. It looks like Republican. It just Republicans are vastly outnumbered. It kind of looks like Berkeley, and it still wasn't supportive. This is not that's not our demographics here. We're 2-1 Republicans to Democrats, and yet within that, it still says that despite overall trends within the region, within Mark Twain, there's something kind of special and different that still makes people want to more inclined to a request for investment in your schools. So you go to the next slide here. So, I mean, we know consideration. This is just the kind of overall thoughts that I had that I wanted the board to process and think about. As we all know, the district is conservative. It's not Berkeley, it's not Marin County. Let's see.
Mom,
There you go. Yeah. So and like I said, the results of last month's election weren't terrible, but weren't stellar. Huge regional differences. The normal is 80+% since Prop 39, with the proposition that dropped voter approval from 2/3 in 2002, 55%. The normal success rate across the state, it's been 80-85%. It was right around 70% for last November. And again, I talked about the regional differences. We could talk about different specific reasons. We could talk about you know, gas prices, inflation. We could talk about all kinds of macroeconomic things that would be specifically assigned and specific to last November and specific to that election day. Or we could talk about specific things that happened for Mark Twain uniquely, as opposed to all other districts that were kind of going through the same process. My thought, though, is the persistent trend in the Sierras is that the base of support has been chipped away by enough percentage points that we are in just a really hard place right now to get a bond passed in up and down, basically up and down the 49 in the Eastern Sierras, up and down the 49, up and down 395. And my thought about it is, and I don't have the answer to this, I've been contemplating different things. I'm working on running a regression on a certain ratio of different demographics to outcomes last November. I'll share that, Paula. You'll get a kick out of me being a nerd. But bigger conversations, I think, make sense. And I was just actually talking with Tim Taylor, head of SSBA. He's working on some of that stuff from the state aid side to make hardship easier for districts to get, which is hardship is you don't have to provide a local match. It's not a state share and local share. It's just the state provides all of it. I don't have particular policy solutions there, but I'm excited to work with more districts, work with more superintendents to try to lead that charge with Gavin Newsom and with the legislature. And I don't think, I mean, you know, you get into an unfair state where there's a whole swath of the state that the kids don't have the option to have improved facilities because it's tied to bonds that in certain parts of the state just the voters won't support. So stay tuned on that one, and Paul, I'll keep you in the loop on that one as well. So if you could go to the next one. And next steps. Again, this is I want to end this on a happy note because you guys went through the right process. You went through a robust process. You have a team assembled. That team will continue having momentum. You guys have already acted on at the December meeting to move forward with the TK projects and some modernization projects that will be funded with a combination of funds on hand and dollars that the state matches and reimburses you for. So all kinds of good news there, and I'm proud to have been a part of those conversations and keep on moving this ball forward because your kids deserve it and your schools could really use those improvements. As far as other specific next steps, we could watch economic and political kind of trends and see if there's an option for a 2024 election. That'll be something that I think your successor, Paula, and the board will have to contemplate, not today or tomorrow, but as we get into the summer, and I'm happy to come back and have more conversations. On that note, actually, one other thing that the board might be interested in seeing, although again, it has a cost, just like the survey had a cost. The survey companies, EMC or any other survey company, can do what they call a tracking poll to basically ask people what their reasons were for voting no, or what they think is the basis for the bonds not being successful. That's worthwhile option, may not make sense here, maybe too big of an investment, and we probably already have a sense of it. It can kind of, with the other data I've already shared, suss that out ourselves. But that's just one option. A couple of other both fiscal and political options that actually I think may come into play. There's what's called a tax rate extension bond, where you say the tax rate is not going to go up, or the existing tax rate, because you already have the tax rate from the 2004 bonds, or you say it's only going to go up by a very small amount. And then basically when the existing bonds are repaid, I think it's in 2033, then the new bonds just capture all of the tax rate as opposed to none of it or just a portion of it. So that's one option that tends to solicit a little bit more support. The kicker is, well, two kickers there. It does end up costing more in interest because you're kind of backloading the debt for starters. But then for two, there's just all kinds of legal complexities to it. It used to be simpler to do it, and there's been a handful of reforms that have actually kind of prevented that from easily being done. And we will keep on watching to see if that becomes more kind of an invented wheel option. Or if it makes sense to consider. Another one that, and this one is something that I think actually may prove fruitful for Mark Twain, is there's what's called school facility improvement districts, where you take a boundary line within an existing school district, and you say, okay, this one's going to be school facility improvement district 1, and that side of the boundary line is going to be school facility improvement district 2. And then the bonds in school facility improvement district number 1 go to the school within school facility improvement district number 1, and the bonds within school facility improvement district number 2 go to the school within that SFID. And in here it would make sense because obviously we have Mark Twain and Copper. I'm not sure if that would necessarily elicit that much more support within Copper, but it's something that could be considered as we move forward. Then, there's the broader conversations with folks like Tim Taylor and SSDA and other neighbors that are facing similar challenges to get anything approved in the region. And regardless of whatever the strategy, whether there's something in pursuit or not, you guys do have this improvement process happening at both campuses. That ought to be bragged about. That ought to be, I'm sure we will. be in a position where that still continues to get shaped by community input and advertised and bragged about, frankly, because it's something that's good news. Then, the sustained school and community outreach and engagement. Obviously, it's just a good idea generally about whatever the district's doing, but in this one particularly, because it might involve going back out and asking for another bond, to have us doubling down on making sure the community understands the needs, how we're doing what we can with the money we have on hand, and we're turning that into doubling it up over the next 5 years, but making sure that people understand that there still is a long way to go for both campuses. So with that, I think that covers it for me. I will turn it over to questions or any discussion from the board.
Any questions for?
I just want to say thank you because I worked on this with you and it was super eye-opening. I was really disappointed, but you were great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm honored to have been a part of it and be a part of this team. And again, I'm really proud of the fact that you guys are still moving forward and making some of the improvements happen, because that, I think, it just ought to happen. But also it's something that potentially builds momentum towards doing more stuff in the future and potentially gets more stronger support from the broader community.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So on the next one, that we're supposed to have approved. Those are. It's right here, right?
They're just information.
Information.
Yeah,
Okay.
you had already done this. This is just a
This is.
confirmation of what you
Okay.
did in the organizational meeting, so
Right.
you don't have to do any of that.
Mark Twain, item C, Mark Twain student pickup. In November, Mark Twain Elementary Principal Lisa Shaw made changes to the pickup procedures for parents at student dismissal. Board President Diane Bateman requested that these procedures be reviewed. The transportation director, superintendent, principal, and board member all met at winter break to discuss possible changes. The group determined there should be discussions with Angels Camp PD chief and the city supervisors to look at the possibility of using the gate at the Kinder parking lot. That was done long ago. The greatest difference is that at the time that area was being used, kindergarten wasn't full day. The transportation director and superintendent will be continuing to look at this possibility. The transportation director continues to observe the progress of the current plan regularly.
So we are looking at that, the gate at the side on Stanislaus as a possibility pickup. However, the concern that did come across both is that we do have to go to the city. And one of the things that Angels PD is concerned about is the fact that the dismissals don't have that big gap, because when that was happening, the littles were getting out so much earlier, and so they are concerned about the line people may walk not only the driveway line, but then the line onto whatever road that is. How come none of us know that road? What's that road, Scott?
It's the road by the school.
Right in front of the school?
Walleney.
Thank you. No, words will
No,
come to me.
Stanislaus.
Stanislaus, no, the other one. Salem. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica.
We're
It's
gonna
not
get
tell
there.
me that
We're gonna get there.
We don't talk about Stanislaus and Walleney. So, but anyway, they're concerned about the people being able, so they're not opposed to it. We do have to go to the city though.
What would they want? Like no parking during certain
We would, yeah,
hours,
there
or-
would be painting, there would be the painting and the no parking in that whole area, which looks like there could be about 4 cars at, so as long as we could somehow make sure that the driveway, that people understand that they can't block the driveway when they're waiting online, or the Stanislaus and San Joaquin, then there would be, so we just have to figure that out and look at that. And so one of the things that was shared is that it seems like, now I don't know about this week because of the weather, but it does, at least it was the opinion with Bill Sudling that things are slowly, you're not having the backup that we had when it first started, but we're continuing to look at it, and I'll be talking to the city supervisors to find out the next process and having them hear it. Because my thought is that it's important just to have them hear it. If we choose not to do that, or we choose to do something else, it's important just to continue that conversation. So I wanted to give that update.
Can I suggest something?
Sure, yes, please.
As a parent dropping off and picking up, it's the road that goes up, kind of the hill that you park on, that people park on along the crew. The other side of where you exit, there's a road, and yesterday I parked there, and I just see kind of a potential hazard there, because what happens is kids walk out where the vehicles actually exit, parallel with the cars leaving. And then they have to cross right there. And I actually seen a car, like a little mini coupe, pull out of there pretty fast. And as kids are walking, they have to walk across the step.
The one that curves.
That's
If you're coming from, US Bank.
Yeah.
Very kind of merge
Yeah,
left.
okay.
And people
Yep.
go around and they start facing down here. Little kids have to, if the parents are waiting in the vehicles, they have to cross by themselves. And they cross where there's no crosswalk, and coming off of what is it, Stanislaus, I believe. People tend to go kind of fast, and I'm like, hey, slow down, and
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
something, I'm not 18 years back in time, guy, with a stop sign. Because when I went, there was a kid up here, there was two. And I went, and it was right up here crossing, there were two crossing the new gym parking lot, just crossing over the street right there. And he was okay. That's something that I think definitely do. Yes.
I think that was one of the reasons that when the crosswalks went in, they put not a crosswalk, the sidewalk went in, they put a crosswalk there. So there's a kid probably in the last 5, 6, 7 years that was hit on a bike and somewhere around there. And I think that was one of the reasons why.
It's a dangerous neighborhood. My cousin said it's very bad.
People don't slow down in this neighborhood at all. And you also have you have people that are also driving through that aren't picking up kids at that time that are maybe impatient. And
Yeah.
then driving up Stanislaus, they pass on the right side. And then you also have that coming down from people that are leaving the neighborhood too.
We had 4 years ago, we had a hit and run where he's talking about on a student. And never found the
Wow.
vehicle, and we actually had a picture of the vehicle and never found.
Thank you, I appreciate your input on that. On to our board members, do you think you have anything?
No, just other welcome, Scott. It's nice to have new blood. And he's diving into questions, comments. He has lots of work.
Scott?
Thank you for the opportunity. Forward to with all this.
Christie?
Also welcome, good luck. It's a learning curve for a little bit. That happens probably for like 3, 4, 5, 6 years. As far as community stuff that I've been to, I was able to go to Miss Friends class and meet the cutest little kids ever, and that was a ton of fun. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was about a bear story. So I don't know. They were really involved with it. And then just trying to get back in the swing of things after Christmas break. It's really, really, really hard. 'Cause I kind of want another couple weeks, but clearly that's not going to happen. So that's all I have to say.
I just want to say welcome back, everyone. And I know, everyone's thoughts and prayers are that Jennifer Eltringham gets well quick and gets back on this board. That's all I have to say. Parent groups, do we have anyone from parent groups? Yay. You can stay there, just introduce yourself.
So, I'm Jessica Johnson, and I'm here on behalf of the Marketing Badger Boosters. This is my second year on Boosters. I have a third grader here. The Badger Boosters are getting back on their feet. I think they had a lot of years where it was ran by just a few volunteers, and last year and this year, we've seen a lot of active participation in volunteers, which is really exciting. We've had some new fundraisers. We were able to sell fireworks in July, which many of you volunteered to help with, which thank you. We did a jogathon in November, and that was monies raised for campus beautification projects. Some pizza nights with Round Table Pizza offering a percentage of sales to the boosters, and then we continue to sell spiritware. So I think it's been a while since the boosters have given the board an update. So at our last meeting, we decided to come and try to come regularly, but I'll try to keep it brief. Just kind of go through a rundown of what we've done so far this year. We've been able to provide Kona Ice for all students and staff on the first Friday of school. In September, we brought in an assembly for the whole school, which was called the Invisible Wonder. It was a science assembly. In October, there was a BMX assembly that we coordinated, and we were very lucky to get the Angels Camp Police Association to sponsor, and that was for Red Ribbon Week. In October, we did a trunk or treat, a candy drive throughout the school. It was a great opportunity for students and community at large to come and have some safe trick or treating. The fire department and police department participated. Great. Sold pizza to raise money for graduation, and leadership sold popcorn. ELAC sold burritos. We hired Casey Barnett to come back again to do 5 art classes for each TK and 5th grade class. And then we were able to get some grant funding from the Calaveras Community Foundation. And so with that, we are extending the art classes with Casey to middle school, as well as starting some pottery classes. So this grant funding was to promote and bring in more art for our students. So pending our kiln is operating, which we will find out tomorrow that it's operating efficiently, we'll be able to start those next month. We have another BMX assembly, which will be different than the first, for anti-bullying scheduled for March 16th. This one is sponsored by the County Behavioral Health. We were able to put together just a small little gift for all staff at Christmas time. And then some teacher requests that we've approved so far this year. We were able to purchase some bean bags for Mrs. Berlio's SDC class, as well as some additional supplies for her classroom. Lori Oliver's request for a coffee cart for Kindness Week, which is coming up. So we paid for transportation for 2nd grade to go to Cal Fire on a field trip, as well as the transportation for 4th and 5th grade classes to go to Indian Grinding Rock. And then just a couple of projects that we did kind of right before school, and in the summer we added some fence cups to the school, which are the Badger Paws, the Badger, and where it says Home of the Badgers by the kindergarten playground. We had a lot of great community response and from that, previous teachers emailing us. So that was really exciting. So we hope to kind of spruce up campus a bit. With leadership, we were able to pay for t-shirts for all staff, as well as TK and kinder and 7th and 8th grade, trying to kind of boost some spirit. And we facilitated the teacher wish list. So we were able to promote teacher wish lists online for people to just purchase items on their Amazon wish list or donate funds to certain classes. think that's about it. We are currently planning the rest of the school year, which will include all staff appreciation week in May, Badger Fun Day, and kinder registration boxes and putting that campus beautification monies to work. So we'll try to come and give you an update more often.
Thank you. We
Yeah,
we
you're
appreciate everything you guys do. We know it's a lot of work and it's so greatly appreciated.
Do we have one from Copper? Sarah?
Not tonight.
Okay.
Okay, do we not have any students?
No, I'll speak for student council though, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay, we've been very busy. To say the least. We had Badger games in early December, which was a pretty low turnout comparatively, but we're really ultimately glad that we did it because it was a really huge success and it will just kind of jumpstart making it more of what it used to be. I think there was a little bit of a lull after COVID with kids not really knowing really what it was at all, and there's a lot of excitement around it. And I'm actually excited that we've got 6th grade into it too this year. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will be able to sign up to do it. It was fun with some of the little 6th graders in there. And then student council did that with through the help with Badger Boosters, and we sponsored the snack bar for that. We sold Sanagrams that were purchasable for kids to send. We also had we sold them in front of the winter spring or the same winter spring winter
It was the winner.
performance. Okay, for parents too, and that was really fun for parents to be able to buy those for those kids as well. And then just going in order here. With the snack bar, we did a project in my class. Most of what they came up with as improvements for the school were surrounded by food. So we were able to come up with kind of having a snack bar. So every Tuesday and Thursday, we sell to the 4th through 6th recess, and then the junior high break also on Tuesdays and Thursdays they can purchase from student council. All of that money is not going to student council. It's for transportation in general, a pool we can pull from for field trips and really I'm hoping we'll be able to have enough to kind of maybe disperse to the grade levels ultimately, which would be really nice. But for now, it's just if people want to go on a field trip to have that money for transportation, because that's the largest cost. And we did 2 lunchtime activities. One was today, just in the last bit. We had musical chairs today, which is simple and rudimentary as that game is hilarious. My gosh. So junior high and then the 4, 5, 6 as well. Their next one is on the 26th, which is guess the lyric and as much knowledge as you know about that particular artist, song title, etc. Then we sell allograms and week before Spirit Week, which is also the AMA rally, and then AMA boys basketball is the week of the 6th. And we do popcorn sales the Tuesday of every last month. Paula set us up with a popcorn machine, which has been awesome. So we make popcorn for the whole school, and they're able to purchase it if they would like to. And we have a dance tomorrow night. So we're
Living and good.
doing it. Kid might not be here every month, but they're doing it.
The popcorn last Friday of the month.
Last Tuesday.
Thank you. Let's see. Jeff? Yes.
It's for the 8th.
Sure, yeah.
The ACE negotiation team met last Friday. We took a work day, which was good because there's a lot of issues on the tables here. So we got through almost all of them. So hopefully that will facilitate having a more productive work day when we meet in February. I will hope Springs Eternal. Maybe we'll wrap it up. It'd be great. But there are a lot of issues there because the whole contract's open this year. So I'm going to think positive. I'm going to manifest positive vibes for our February meeting. We noted that the governor's budget, mid-year or January budget came out this week. And despite the state having budget shortfalls, they're maintaining commitment to education. So we're excited about that. noting that they were gonna they're proposing an 8% COLA for next year, so we'll be excited after we wrap up this year's raise to look at next year. All on that positive thought.
Thank you. We have classified,
There's not here that we do.
and we go on to our principals. Michelle?
Welcome 2023. Came in like a lion with rain. We continue to grow. We got several new students in the past several weeks, and we have several non-English speaking students. So we're actually really looking at our ELLs and what we're doing, how we're supporting them. We paired them up with some Spanish speaking, because most of them are Spanish, but our one Portuguese speaking is really fluent on Google Translate. But our students have been incredibly welcoming, showing them around and just kind of guiding them. So that's been great. We've seen teachers come back from maternity leave, which is really wonderful to like have that full complement back on campus. And we added Haley to Job Share, which is really kind of nice to steal her from over here and have her be on campus. And then one of our long-term subs is loved her time in the SDC class so much that she's actually looking at an SDC credential now. So we're like, okay, we'll take anything we can get. We've got science and social studies looking pilots. We'll have a group of teachers meet to talk about the first round of piloting this tomorrow. And then we'll go from there. ELOP continues to grow. We have 20 kids coming on a regular basis. We've interwoven it with our reading intervention after school for our K3s. Our academic recovery will get up and running for our 7th and 8th. We got those progress reports going out, and it'll hopefully start around the 17th. We've just held a 2 weeks now. We're into our 2nd week of no, I guess it's our 1st week of SSTs for struggling 8th graders, so that we can make some plans for how we get to June and things of that nature. Even though ski trips had to be rearranged, our kids are flooding us with paperwork. They're excited to go. I think next Tuesday,
17th and
17th.
30th.
Yeah, so for junior high, so they're all excited. Smokey the Bear was a huge hit for K3. They loved seeing him and having him. And then we've got a group of teachers working on activities for Kindness Week as well.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hatfield?
So you have my board report. Copperopolis attendance in December was pretty dismal. I think we were at 82% on the 16th. Michelle has updated that for January. I know it's gone up by 7%, so I think we're at like 89%. It's not really trending very much better. I mean, we're continuing those SART meetings. I just had a stack that I went through and scheduled probably 15 more of those SART meetings. And if parents aren't showing up, then I am calling them and having conversations over phone and noting that in Infinite Campus. And, you know, the discussions are centering around how important it is for students to be in school, not only academically, but also social, emotionally. When they're out for long periods of time, it is harder and harder to get them back in school. I believe we were at like 238 in December. We have declined a little bit. I'm not exactly sure because we have parents that have confirmed that students are not coming back, but we have not received resume requests yet from the schools in Idaho, Washington, different states where they have moved. So we did get a new kinder. One of my very first students at Copperopolis. I am now that old that I have his child now at school. I always referred to him as Brady 2 because my Brady was always Brady 1. So Brady Westford's child is now at my school, and it's the craziest experience ever. I figured I was was never gonna be that old, but apparently I am. We do have a few issues. Wi-Fi is something I think we're gonna have to discuss with Copperopolis, just giving you guys a heads up. Comcast continues to become a problem. It's not in our area. What we have found out when we do a ticket through CCOE is that they have to then check the entire line of Comcast from Copperopolis all the way down to LA. And so if there is disruption anywhere from Copperopolis to LA, we could be out an hour, 2 days, and it happens quite often. And so I think that's something we probably should look at. Technology is a part of our educational system, and the office cannot run either. Phone systems don't run without, we have one phone. And that is it that we can plug in. So I think that's something we should look at. Our scoreboard has officially, I believe, died down at Copperopolis. So I have let Eric Peters know that we have an issue there. He was going to look into that. So I believe that is something also that we will need to do. My school site council is really up and running. I have lots of parent support there. They would like to let you know that they are very interested in the superintendent process. And so if you are looking for parents to be involved in that, I have several that would love to join in your process. They also looked at my SARC, my school accountability report card yesterday at our meeting, and they approved everything. There's several members that were from last year, so they knew what we had done. Teaching staff, I'm not taking ACE's thunder, but I did have some staff share with me at our staff meeting last week, last Friday. It feels, I think because of the storms, it feels like January has been already 30 days or 31 days. And the academic recovery process that is a part of our current grading policy, I believe is pretty taxing for them. The paperwork piece of it is the process that is really it's cumbersome for them. They feel overwhelmed by it, right now, especially second mid trimester is really a hard process for them. One teacher, you could have one grade in there for one test, right? And not one grade, but like if you're grading on a weighted system and 60% of your grade is a test and you only have one test in there and you have homework assignments and 15 kids fail that test, that's 15 kids with an F, right? And so now you have 15 kids that are getting those white papers every Monday and going through that. And while we want to keep up in communication, I do agree with them. I love having those meetings with parents. I do it at mid-trimester, I do it at trimester, academic meetings with the teacher, parent, everyone. Sometimes they turn into SST, sometimes they turn into more than that. We're not seeing the results, I don't think, from those that you would like. So I think that's a problem. And, fatigue is a real deal after COVID and the years. And so that leads me into the next thing. Sherry Sedler has offered with lots of my teach staff to do the Compassion Fatigue Project. She was going to come and speak last Friday, but ironically, she was fatigued and had the flu and wasn't able to come in and speak on that. So we're working on another date. And if you're not aware of what the Compassion Fatigue Project is, it is a project where Sherry offers her services of therapy for free to staff on any campus. And she will come onto your campus and she will support whomever she needs to in whatever kind of tragedy or anxiety or stress or whatever is happening for them. And so she has done that for several members of my staff. We have welcomed back Adriana Hatfield from her long maternity leave, and Carol Ardall is back on our campus from retirement, running our Title I program, which is really robust, and we love having her back. And I highlighted a bunch of dates in my board report, and the one that's coming up the soonest would be January 23rd, which is our first ski trip for 5th and 6th grade. And we are very excited to get kids up on that mountain. That was something that I was really instrumental in as a certificated staff member, and I am really excited to get Copper kids up on that mountain, because I do not believe we have a lot of Copper kids that reach the snow, and so trying to get as many of those 5th and 6th graders as we possibly can. Any questions?
No, thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent's report, Ms. Wyatt.
You have my board report. I did want to talk about just 2 issues very briefly, and that is, yes, the governor did release his budget this week, and I was certain that ACE would not catch that 8%. So I'm a little sad that that came up tonight. No, I also am excited for negotiations, and will continue to do well. But we are combing through the governor's budget and what the true impact is going to be. And it is exciting that even with the shortfall, it is, I think, just exciting as a citizen of California that there continues to be a commitment to education, and that's always a good thing for our children. The other thing that I worked on over winter break, given a situation that occurred in our district, is I reached out to an organization that's international that is called Best Buddies, and it's international. And I had a conversation with the state director, and what it really does, it has some similarities to something that is local that I don't quite frankly know a lot about, that's at Bret Hart. And that is called Circle of Friends, but it really is about inclusive practices, and just in looking at student differences and building not only tolerance and acceptance, but really underscoring the unique talents that we all have, regardless of what may appear either overtly or covertly as a limitation, and how we can uplift one another. And there are several middle schools and elementary schools in the area that actively do Best Buddies. So as I now have another meeting next week to kind of find out how we really tap in, and looking at perhaps taking a contingency of students to a school that I believe the 2 closest are in Fresno and San Francisco, but I would love to be able to have a group of students to go to those schools and really see that working in operation, and bring it back here. So that's my report. We continue to be up in enrollment, and our attendance rate continues to be down. So, and that's not a great combination. So, because with our enrollment going up, that's always a good thing. But if our ADA stays suppressed, then they basically knock each other out in the benefit of that. So that's something, and I do appreciate the sites and the administrators really trying to tackle and have those conversations and start meetings. We did just go through, I sent out a memorandum yesterday to our attendance folks that if folks are calling in or are late because of weather related things, that those do constitute excused absences. If parents call in and share that, because the governor and OES did declare states of emergency for the weather. So and they're doing that. So hopefully that will take some of the angst off parents and that they're having and trying to get their kids to school, but yet dealing with, backed up sewage and gray water and all the other kinds of things that come overtaxed rain. So that's it. Any questions?
No, thank you very much. Move on to item 7, consent agenda items. These are matters listed under. The matters that are listed under the consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion and voice vote. A, approval of purchase orders. B, approval of warrants. C, approval of intra-district transfer agreements. It is the recommendation of the superintendent that the Mark Twain Board of Education approves the intra-district agreements in support of the site administrators. Approval of minutes. Copper surplus / Chromebook / iPads, Copperopolis Elementary School itemization of surplus for discard. Boys basketball field trip request. The athletic director, Eric Peters, has found an overnight basketball tournament held in Dixon, California at John Knight Middle School on January 14th and 15th. They would like the 8th grade team to attend. The Williams quarterly report, quarter 2. The Williams, etc. at versus State of California, etc. at Williams lawsuit was settled, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, was settled in 2004. The class action lawsuit was filed in 2000 on the basis that state agencies failed to provide public school students with equal access to instructional materials, safe and decent school facilities, and qualified teachers. One result of the Williams settlement was a requirement that schools modify the uniform complaint process to include complaints regarding sufficiency of instructional materials, condition of facilities, and teacher misassignments. The district has completed that modification in March of 2004. Further, the district is required to present quarterly uniform complaint report summaries to the board and the County Office of Education. There have been 0 complaints during the first quarter, October 2021 through November 2021. The attached summary reflects that information. I seek a motion on these agenda items.
I have a question though,
Yes.
because I didn't do this right last time in the direction. I have some questions about one of the purchase orders. And I remember I pulled one from the agenda, but I pulled the wrong thing. So if you could just tell me how to word it, I'm
Okay.
just looking for
Which
information.
purchase order?
It's going to be the science camp one for the $29,000.
Can you tell me what the purchase
it's
order number is?
Oh, sure. BP, do you need that? BP 023 00103. It's on page 55, very first. Towards
Oh,
the top.
okay. So if you're just wanting information,
I
you
would-
don't need to pull it, you just ask for the information, and then if you, after that information is given, if you don't want that to be a part of your vote, then you can pull it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just looking for information. If it's sort of a hefty amount, I don't know if I recall us ever paying for science like that.
We have, so the district always pays and it goes through. There has been history of that PTC and Badger boosters and fundraisers then all come, but it is paid
By
through
us,
the
through-
district,
okay.
yes, and then those other entities offset the cost.
So what is the cost? What do
That
you
is
know?
the cost.
No,
for
no,
the
I mean,
student
like,
registration this year.
What is the procurement fee? What is the?
So we are going to be paying because there are instructional, so we will be with our one-time dollar, we will be paying the registration of the 29,000 because of the equity issues of how it's been paid before. So we are going to take that on as a district, 100% of the registration and then employee costs. And then we have asked that that there be fundraising for the charter buses because our transportation department can't really handle with the number of drivers that we have and what it takes, and it's also not cost effective because our school buses can't haul the luggage, so we had to.
That's generally fair.
Yeah, a truck that takes trailer, they truck that pay some parent to do. So, and just the time, and so we have asked for fundraising, for that. That is about a $7,000 cost.
No, we just got it.
Oh, you did what?
$4,600 one way for one charter.
46, so that's going.
One way?
One.
Uh,
For one bus, one back, down and back, sorry.
Oh,
I didn't
oh,
say one way.
okay.
I'm sorry, round trip.
it's round
So
trip.
900 one bus,
It's 9,200.
two.
Yeah,
Okay.
so $9,200 for that.
Copper PTC has agreed to pay for one.
So for the 29,000, we just don't know what is fundraising money yet.
So we know that that is going to be our cost out of our one-time grant dollars. Yes.
What are the grant dollars?
So those are gonna come from not only ELOC, but they're also gonna come from our ESSER monies that are for enrichment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that we still have. Also. And part of that is just making sure there's equity because we've had some parents paying, we've had some parents not, I mean, it's been a gamut. So that is something that we met and looked at, with the people that have been, science camp has been near and dear to their heart. And they've been really active and have history, which Kurt Snyder has been amazing and instrumental in Copper, and that he holds probably the greatest amount of history, because he's been the most active. And the concern is that if we're expecting every student to go and we're counting it as instructional day,
I knew
meeting
that.
the curriculum, that
Yeah.
we felt it was important, again, for that equity issue. And the principals, and Bernadette and myself, along with Justin Miller, who also is the other go-to person, with Kurt, met regarding that and determined that right now, we needed to take care of that as the district. And then that's something that will have to be considered in the future, in terms of what that looks like or what really the expectation is for that camp. With as you plan forward, I do know and am very thankful. Kurt has been very, very prudent in making sure that not only was he addressing the fiscal concerns as he compared camps, but the big thing was that the camp truly does meet the Common Core standards in not just science, but in other fields as well. So, but primarily science, so that it truly does have that instructional component.
So the kids will be fundraising for the 4,600, because it sounds like one is taken care of, so the kids, who's heading
Well,
that?
so
The kids-
Justin Miller has already, from the Coppers, so from the Mark Twain side, but I think from the Copper side too, it's not just the parent groups.
Right.
But I know that there was a big ornament sale, so they're doing things,
Cause that's just what I remember. That's why when I saw this, I was like, okay, do we get reimbursed? That's a lot, but I remember my kids fundraising and then it goes towards their student account and then that's how I guess it's paid, but they
Great.
took buses then.
Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
now chartered fund.
But in the scheme of things, it's not, the charter bus, but our transportation, by the time you pay the overtime and the subs and all of that kind of thing, and then you hire the person, actually, with what we have to charge back to the organization, if you will, even though we're the organization, by the time we go through our formula, really a charter bus is very cost efficient when you're talking about the time that you're spending for a district bus and the distance it's going. Not to include because you have to have subs driving here while you send someone there or vice versa, and the overtime and things like that. So while people automatically assume that a charter bus must be, way more exorbitant in cost than our transportation, it's really not true anymore. Because we have a formula that we go by, and in terms of what our bus cost is. And so a charter bus is cost efficient and takes a lot of strain off, and much more enjoyable for those of you that haven't ridden on a school bus for 4 hours. It makes the journey much more pleasant. So that's that. Did you want to pull that item?
No. Any further questions on that? Board, no? Okay, I believe we've had a motion. Or we did not.
No.
We didn't get that
You did
far.
not.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion. Scott makes a motion. Is there a second? A second. Christie seconds it. Timothy?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Christie? Aye. And Diane? Aye. Motion passes 4 with 1 absent. Going on to 8, review and action items, consultant selection for superintendent search. In May 2022, the governance team chose to pursue a new superintendent to lead the district beginning July 1st, 2023. At the December 2022 regular business meeting, the governance team directed the superintendent to seek proposal from 3 specific consulting firms after reviewing a list of consultants who have recently been hired and recommended by neighboring districts in Tuolumne, Amador, and Calaveras. Bernadette Moran, District Business Manager, and Elaine Nielsen, Business Manager Consultant, are recommending the award to the SSDA for not only the financial consideration, but also the ongoing mentoring for the first year for the chosen superintendent.
You do have supporting documents from Leaders Associates, McPherson and Jacobson Recruitment Services, and the SSDA search proposal. And we do have members online from those firms, and they're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. And so if you want to unmute yourselves, and if you want to, if there are any questions, you can. Go for it.
Are there any questions or comments?
On the documentation from the companies. For all 3 of them, I was concerned about the comments about the support for the new superintendent, and I didn't understand it because it seemed kind of vague comments on what they were offering. And I would like to get that more fleshed out of what they're doing for the support for a new superintendent. I'd say new, it may not be someone who's brand spanking new, but new to our district.
Right. Would you suggest that we reach out to these individuals and ask them if they could be a little more specific? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I'm also confused about the timeline.
Well.
To do something.
I believe John is representative of.
No.
Is anyone on?
No, I'm not. No.
We could do that if we.
So you're hoping for more information on the support to the new superintendent that comes
Yes.
aboard?
And one of the companies, they said, to me, was not a huge, might sound as marketing is saying if the new superintendent is not retained after for the first 2 years, then they'll redo it for free. It's like, I'd rather have something to say what they're gonna do to make sure we don't reach that point.
The only one that I recall that had mentorship was the SSDA that had active mentorship for the new superintendent. Was SSDA. There's, I think all three of these firms are avail themselves to superintendents for questions and concerns and I think that all of them employ, typically your consultants are retired superintendents. And so, but I would say the bulk of the work is finding the new superintendent.
Sure. And that was just the thing that for me that stuck out. Besides the prices differences, but I don't know if some saw other things or familiar names that based on maybe local job searches they've done for nearby districts.
I don't remember the last 2 times over the years that they had a mentorship after the fact. And I don't remember them doing that. Now, they may have, and I just wasn't aware of it. Well,
It's typically only done if the person
brand new or something.
Wasn't here. I'm not sure. Do we have, for anyone that's on Zoom, are you representing? I'm not sure who the names are for everybody. But is there anyone on Zoom that is representing any of the superintendent search documents and firms? They did all receive the invite. I don't know if others planning to have it though in other places.
Exactly. Are you satisfied or?
It's not a sink or swim feature. If people have other strong feelings about.
Well, it's something too, when we meet with the individuals, we can ask questions. Is there anything?
I eliminated the first one. That the SSDA and I don't know the pronounce his name. Those 2 proposals, I thought that a little bit better.
Which
what
2
we're
did
looking
you say?
for. SSDA and
It's McPherson and Jacob is the
oh,
company.
okay.
So the second one, and third one.
Second and third.
I have the same feeling. So I had to take. I would go for the second too.
Should we make the motion to proceed with perhaps eliminating one and proceeding with the other 2?
Could we invite the 2 others to come to the next meeting?
Sure. I think that would be
Point of
great.
order,
Please.
with all due respect, I would suggest that if you're going to not make a decision, that you have a special meeting to have a meeting. You guys are very far behind the timeline in your selection, and so I think it would be important to schedule it and not wait until February, into February.
You need 30 special meetings to beat me.
I'm trying. Okay, can we move on? Ready to move on with the recommendation to holding a special meeting very
Are we
quick?
setting the date now?
Yes.
I would.
What date would you like?
So again, point of order, you need to make a motion and let it die, or you need to make a motion that you're moving forward. You need to, this is an action item, so you
Right.
have to take action.
Do I hear a motion on this?
I'd like to make a motion to, once we get point of order again. And that's good, I like that. That we, invite, search company 2 and 3, to come to, show up maybe online or in person to a special meeting.
Do I hear a second on that?
You're open to, are you open to it being just Zoom or in person or a combination thereof? And the only reason I would ask you to put that as part of your motion is a special meeting has the public component, and you're gonna want to make sure that you are open, that there's not that as you make a vote, that you're not going to be swayed by the fact that the person physically showed up or didn't physically show up. So you just need to be certain that that's the case.
I don't have a problem with motivating.
Okay.
Do I
So,
hear, do I hear a second on that?
And if, by the way, I can withdraw my motion to let it die, if we have enough people who have enough information to feel to make a choice. I will have to vote.
I would have preferred them to show up. I understand what's going on, so certainly, if there's some other issues. I'm prepared to make a choice. However, I don't want to, whatever everybody else's comfort level is fine.
so you have a motion.
Yeah.
I know. You have a motion. You either need
Just
to.
in case it wanted to not get that.
And the board president hasn't, because there's no second, there can't be discussion on it yet, so. As
Can I-
soon
can
as
I
there's,
withdraw?
sure,
I'm withdrawing.
okay,
Do I hear anyone else that wants to make that motion? Any motion? So motion dies.
Mine's dead.
well, withdrawn, it didn't die.
Withdrawn.
So I'm prepared to make a motion to use McPherson and Jacobson.
I'll second.
Timothy?
Oh, no, discussion,
Uh,
you gotta have a discussion.
yeah,
Discussion?
but
There any discussion? Then hearing them.
Timothy?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Diane? Aye. That's 4 passes with 1 absent. We want to do policy review, sports eligibility. During the break, the superintendent was asked to look into 2 student athlete situations and if the sports policy was followed. One situation was a student who did not participate in tryouts due to believing he did not have grades. Standing detentions for behavior were also in the mix and attending the academic recovery. The question is if the student was eligible to try out and be considered for participation. The second situation is a student athlete actively on the team was suspended for a tobacco vaping incident. Due to that incident, at what point is the student able to be reinstated to the team if at all? It was discovered that the policy in the handbook and the policy that was printed directly from the handbook distributed to parents of athletes for signature is different from that of the policy that was both the August 11th and September 8th governance team meeting documentation. At the August 11th, there was a very robust dialogue and trying to clarify intent. What is currently in the handbook was an initial draft. There were discussions that appear to be agreed upon changes and were voted on with a 4-0-1 approval on August 11th and a 5-0 vote in September. Each of the changes, while it seemed there was consensus via conversation, were not expressly stated at the time of the vote. The policy in the September 8th reflected the changes with regard to what happened with suspensions of 1 week, 5 school dates of banking that was agreed upon in August. What is not reflected in the September policy was the agreed upon immediate removal for the remainder of the season for any vaping/possession violation. Suspensions for fighting were to follow the suspension rules of days plus additional specific time. With regard to the tryout eligibility, the discussion and changes seem to be tryout eligibility and remaining eligibility is based on the most recent progress report or report card with no Fs and a GPA of 2.0. This remained consistent with intent in both the draft, the August 11th and the September 8th paperwork. Another complicating factor is that the coaches had communication with student athletes and or parents, and the principal and AD had not on these two issues. It is important that eligibility come from the AD and principal for team membership, and that the coach defer to the AD with regard to eligibility or site-based disciplines such as vaping incident. In the vaping incident, the student was allowed to practice when in suspended mode, which is a violation on any version of the policies. In the August discussion, the consensus was to allow for the athlete to watch practice during the 5 days of benching. But during actual suspension days, in school or outside, the student should not be in any practice or activity. For the two specific situations, review the two policies. For the two specific situations, review the two policies, consider the additional handouts of selected transcriptions and handouts made available to all at the time of this agenda item, and direct the superintendent, principals, and AD as to which policy is in place for these two situations and the remainder sports season. After much review, the superintendent is recommending the following actions despite the confusion of two policies. The policy listed in the handbook and parent signed acknowledgement to be upheld for the tobacco incident, as that was the indication in the August discussion, and parents had knowledge by way of a signature according to the AD. For the eligibility situation, the student was not eligible at the time of tryout/sign up, as there was less than 2.0 with an F on the progress report. The student did not attend the academic recovery opportunities. The superintendent further recommends to the school site and board to, number 1, when changes are made prior to the vote, any and all changes are to be read by either the district administrative assistant, board clerk, or board vice president as determined prior to calling for a motion by the board president. Number 2, sites are to retain copies of all progress reports for students with Fs or less than a 2.0 GPA until the next progress report dissemination. 3, for the remainder of the 22-23 school year, follow the policy document from the September 8th meeting with the amendment that any student with drug/tobacco suspension for use or possession will be removed from the team for the remainder of the season. 4, board should institute the following annual calendar review of handbook policies and the actual handbook document to ensure accuracy. April board meeting, provide the current student, parent, staff, district handbook with any policies that were instituted after printing. Invite the staff, public administrators, and board to request portions to be reviewed with considered changes by the board policy committee. The June board meeting, board policy committee introduced proposed drafts of the policies reviewed. August board meeting, entire handbook reviewed as an action item to make sure that the policies reflect actions taken by the committee in April and decisions of the board regarding the April policy review in June. Questions, comments?
So you have in your packet the actual policies that were spoke of, the one in the handbook, and also the one that was in the handbook, and also then the August 11th and this August 11th and the September 8th. So those are provided for you. What was handed out to you in the public was myself. I went through and transcribed that hour and a half portion for the sports to give you an idea. Some of the confusion came in that there was much discussion. It was a lively and robust discussion as far as changes that were requested and the rationale is why. And then I had Samantha take my transcription and then listen to it again and make sure that it was accurate. And so, and we would certainly invite anyone to take a listen. Confusion comes or came with the August 11th and the September 8th that when there were changes being made, were, for example, Ms. Garrison might be suggesting certain changes and saying, this is, you know, this is what we want to change to. Everybody was writing that down. And so there were 3 points in the meeting that Mr. Randall asked for to try and gain a kind of specific consensus. But it was not expressly said. And so there was one situation where there was consensus asked, there was no declaration that they were against those changes. So one could assume that the quiet was consensus. There was another situation where 2 people verbally said yes, 2 people remained silent. So again, but no declaration that anyone was against. And then the final motion was that it was moved by Jenny Eltringham, seconded by Diane. And Diane's second, she specifically said, with the changes discussed. And so, but in looking at the 2 policies, as I said, when I really reviewed the 2 situations and tried to keep it very specific, it was that the eligibility, that at the time of tryouts, you needed to be eligible, and that it was whatever document, either progress report or trimester report card, whatever was closest to that date of tryout was going to determine your eligibility. That seemed to be consistent in all documents, and that seems to be how it was administered for eligibility in this particular case. However, there was confusion in sharing that information out. With regard to the vaping incident, that was the one thing. It's in the handbook policy very clear. We stated, but it's not in the September 11th and 8th document. However, in the August 11th, I was actually the one that requested it be there. And the discussion was around fighting taken out. So there were people that Christy and others brought up that there were too many things. Diane entered that part of the conversation where there was concern around fighting, and they were not willing to remove a student with, for the remainder of the season. But that there were statement made where vaping and drugs were that was approval. So again, there was, and then it went from suspension days times weeks. It was a day times 2 weeks, and that we talked about for a long time. And then towards the very end of the meeting, Mr. Schneider, Jenny, there were several people that had spoke to that. And then at the very end of the meeting, or towards the end of the meeting, it was restated that they would go back to, if you were suspended for if you had a suspension, it was an automatic 5 days where you couldn't participate beyond the suspension when you return. And so, as I said, you have the transcript, but we definitely need to have in those kinds of situations, and probably just good practice policy, that when there is discussion, if there's any change made to any document that's being considered as part of a motion, that definitely needs to be read out by either, and I suggest either the vice president, the board clerk, or the administrative assistant, because typically the board president and the superintendent are busy trying to figure out just the dynamics of the meeting. And so that's why I would suggest that it be those three people that read out, so it is very clear what changes are truly in place. Because the August 11th, while I believe that when you listen to it or you read the transcript, I do believe it shows intent, but it's not expressly stated. So, and then I think to make sure is that of what we're talking about, because some of these items, especially in handbook, are so far reaching, is that you provide the handbook. Because for example, last month, you just made some transportation changes for the transportation policy that now are in place instead of, because they replaced and came after the handbook. So I would say in April, you need to have all those documents put together as they currently are, have people have a chance to say, you know, whether it's parents or parent groups or faculty, or you guys to say, this is what we want you to look at. We want the policy committee or a subcommittee or whomever you're gonna have decided to go through that. And then that comes back to your last June meeting and is actually voted on in that meeting so that everybody can ensure that accuracy. With that, you're open to all discuss it.
Any discussion?
When you talk about the reading by the admin assistant, board clerk / vice president, is that for all changes in policy?
I would say that anytime, like, for example, you just did a motion, you know, and there was no change, but if somebody would have said, well, you know, I would like to change, not that we can change somebody's proposal, but so this is not a great example, but let's say when you wanted to make a motion about those firms, and you said, I want to make a motion that I want added in there that there will be a year of mentoring, but that needs to be read in the motion, like once it's like decided, and what it moved is that it actually says, instead of it just kind of being assumed from the discussion because you brought it up, oh, Timothy must want, you know, and so that the changes are actually stated. And for some things, like in this particular instance, that would have taken a lot of time, but it would have been very clear when there's that robust discussion. Some of it's not going to be that, but I think that anytime you're voting, making a motion, especially on a document, and there's been discussion, and Diane was great because the actual motion didn't have anything about the changes, and her second did say with the changes, but the changes had been an hour and a half long discussion of many points along the way, and some of those points even changed along the way. So that's what became convoluted.
I'd like to chime in on this, this item. I'm Jason, I'm a parent of one of the students.
And your last name, Jason?
Colorado. Yeah, my son is Jaden, he's in 7th grade. And so, first so these are the minutes, this is the discussion that I'm trying to understand. The policies were approved with a motion for discussion, does that mean that, I mean, is there a copy of the new policy or were there, was it included?
So the policies were in, that's what's in the handout. Those were the discussions of how that policy, how those policies evolved and came to be. So that was the discussion. There was a policy put forth, and then it was, here are the changes we would like to see in that policy. And that's the discussion or the transcript that everybody was weighing in on the different items.
Is there a new policy available?
So, the policy that's
From August 11th?
the August 11th and the September 8th, those, and I can give you a copy of that. Actually, I think I may have it, so.
So basically, my son was ineligible. I wasn't informed until he didn't tell me, so I wish I would have been, because I think this could have been an item that, you know, this could have been a situation where he could have actually played on a team. What had happened, there was he had a certain grade, and I think because the way the season falls, it's not coming out like during the report card, so it's more like a progress report. And if I'm not mistaken, he was in a class, math class, where he was getting an A. And he was put into a different class, an advanced math class that he could handle, but didn't understand math as well as the other class. So the result at the time was an F. Now, I don't know if it was an A because it wasn't within the grading period, combined with the F, would have made a difference in the overall score. It made eligible. I just know that I do know that he was initially trying out. He was told he was ineligible, then he was. And then it was like he was ineligible again, so we worked, get him eligible. And once he was eligible, it then became a disciplinary item, factor that kept him out. So some of the staff was able to actually make it, have him make his detentions, dedicated the whole day or school day to make his detentions to become eligible again. To find out that he could not hold because the coaches discretion. I don't necessarily disagree as a coach. But as a parent, it was kind of concerning, and because he did work hard to get that grade up with other classes as well. And the initial F compared with the A from the other class, if we compare those two, I mean, he was getting an F at the time. So I don't know how close it is to the end of the grading period, where I do know it was mentioned that it wasn't and so the end result is he's not on the team. It's late in the season now. I had a discussion with Paula about this morning, and I agree with her, and I appreciate the open conversation and suggestions that you had, Paula. And I don't know that it would be beneficial for the team or for him to go onto the team at this point. It's just too late in the season. I think it would be awkward. And so I do know, and I'm looking at these notes, page 2, like 9 lines down. Jenny made some really good points. Jenny Ocean, and she said, sports can save children. You can't lose everything at 12 or 13. You don't need to strip the kid down to nothing. I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I can say this for sure. My son is one of those kids that needs to be involved with the team. I think he had a pretty bad experience, 6th grade basketball last year, and was even told by the staff that he didn't take pictures for the team last year. So we're coming off kind of a unfortunate thing, and he didn't take pictures with the team last year. And so, there's and as a staff, I don't understand as much, but you know, as a parent, sitting back and you know, I think I don't understand even more, you know, because you guys have a lot of kids, there's a lot of responsibility. And I'll be the first to admit, my son is disruptive. He has behavior issues. We did have an SST. I feel very, very confident about the staff. And the meeting, it was a good meeting, and seeing a lot of positive changes in my son and having a lot of discussions with him. And I'm very optimistic about the rest of the school year. And it was very, very stoked to hear some of the things being said about some of the things being said about my son. So that was kind of comforting and refreshing. On the other side of things, it's like, you know, Jekyll and Hyde thing, because he's got this rap sheet that's unbelievably long. And so, you know, naturally, I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, so it's who's, you know, is it just the one teacher writing referrals? I haven't even looked at that sheet, to be honest with you. I just heard enough. And so, anyways, you know, like I said, I appreciate the suggestions. I think that Paula has for my son to kind of, you know, maybe you know, make up for this particular loss. But the question would be, would the first grade from the original math class be compared to the grade that was in the advanced math class within the period, the grading period? Could that have potentially, you know, balanced that, or at least brought that up to make him eligible? Because, and again, I think a matter of communication was the issue. So,
Do we know when the change was made?
I'm actually currently looking that up on his drop date from my first.
In
class to
terms of
second
like
class.
progress support or in the preparatory?
If I'm not mistaken regarding his actual math grade, so at mid-trimester, when we do the real progress reports that get sent, he was still in my original homeroom course, where he had an A at the time. We made the jump to the second course, which would have been, I'm assuming, after the mid-trimester in October, after that period, and that's when he started to see the 3 weeks difference of time. He had to play catch up, and he was struggling at the time. So I would assume that was after mid-trimester, but at the time of tryouts, which if I'm not mistaken, is early November.
Early November.
Early November,
Early
right
November.
before second trimester or first trimester ends.
Right.
He had still a poor grade. I was under the presumption I was going to average the 2 grades against each other because they were 2 different bodies of work for his trimester grade at the time. I don't think that was in play at the time regarding this. I think there's other factors as well that we're maybe not getting to quite yet regarding this certain situation, but yeah, I'm looking for the exact drop date itself.
10-14.
10-14, and mid-trimester is what, right before that? Probably the first week of October.
It's October 5th.
So yeah, the first,
I just wonder if you can probably enlighten me if there's a policy for someone who's either going from, to my words, an easier course to a harder course and have a high grade, going low grade, or even the flip. If they were misplaced and they were in a too high of a class,
yeah.
they moved down, they went from a low grade to an A or B. Is there any policy about?
Well, so I really don't know that because we have, let's just talk about kids that transfer in from other schools. We don't
Yeah.
even take those grades outright anyways. Like they don't play any part into our grades. I haven't been told they do, if that's the case, kids that transfer in. So I'm only playing it as a true scale course, but I had a body of work for the kid that we're talking about. So I took it upon myself to balance the 2 grades. But if you're asking if there's like a policy,
So wait, did you balance the grade when you?
afterwards at trimester, he ended up receiving a C. I took the F and the A. The F was like a 59%. The A was like a 92%.
So when you thought you had the F, that led to confusion about eligibility.
It did.
Gotcha.
There might have been other grades at play. I don't know that, but specifically speaking for the math class, that is the case.
I do know that there was another class he was struggling in, he was able to get that grade up. Now, I don't know, I think maybe the problem is at the time of tryouts, we're in between, like, you know, the progress report and the actual grading period.
Right.
So it's hard to get a true, progress report, I mean, or true, accurate grade. So I think it's a timing thing. It falls in a time that's not really clear, and especially if you're moving classes and stuff like that. I mean, so, it's unfortunate, that's come to this. There's not much we can do about it at this point. I don't, like I said, in terms of the team and for my son's sake, I don't know that it would be beneficial that he joins the team this late in the season. However, I do believe it's important to address these kind of things, maybe, at least put somewhere in the policies, adopt some kind of, policy that says, let's look a little further into this. For the kids that aren't eligible, let's maybe, notify the parents and, and do a little investigation, see what we can do, maybe give the kids a chance to at least improve that grade, maybe get a cutoff date, or have some sort of, progress report based upon the tryout date. And, or before.
You can access the portal at any point to look up what a current grade is.
And I'm speaking totally objective, like as a, I think back to August, like getting into that mindset and again, like thinking of this very objectively, trying to have no particular students in mind. Like for me as a teacher, a former athlete, it just makes sense to me. If you are not academically and behaviorally eligible on the first day of tryouts, that is our focus, is fixing that rather than playing sports. Which is why we spent fixing the eligibility. And for me, you receive your progress report, and that is your communication, which would then under, I don't know, policy, whatever we're working off of, would be the placement on academic recovery, which you would attend academic recovery to focus on getting your grades up by November, trimester, but it would really flip if you were a basketball kid, boys basketball tryouts, you would be working to be eligible for tryout.
So.
So academic recovery
So
would
the
make you.
so the problem with that, and that was not, there were some allusions to that in the transcript, thank you. But, and then it came down to what document are we looking at, because there was one part of the conversation where there were about 15 people all talking at once, which that made it difficult. And it was because there was the conversation of Avery checks on, because Avery was brought up, and I did not include that in the because there were multiple people talking and I could not pick the context and who was talking to whom. Then it came down to, and I think it was Lisa answering Jenny, and she said, it's very clear, it's progress report time and it's report card time. Those are the two documents that we are going to use to determine eligibility, depending on what's closer. And so that's, and so what you just brought up is confusing so I want to make sure I understand it, because the boys basketball is difficult to implement. You have a progress report that's clear back in October. They don't start for a month later, and then they start playing right after the Thanksgiving break. So they get a progress report. They get a progress report but we're not going to know who's eligible. However, I think this is to your point, is that if the student had a progress, and that was what I did look at, is that there was no academic recovery at that time.
And that's what
so
makes
what
it
you're
so
saying
difficult.
is that they would have been on academic recovery. And so that makes sense to me. Is like progress report comes in October, then they would have been on academic recovery. And it would have came to someone, whoever they had academic.
Date wise,
then,
honestly,
yeah.
calendar wise, the end of academic recovery, the report cards go home in November.
Within the Tuesday after tryouts.
So a week after tryouts, so your basketball season for boys starts a week before. So if you fail progress reports, you are ineligible to try out. Is basically.
And did we, in this particular case, did we start academic recovery right after progress reports? So that they did have.
Yes, but
You'll have a problem
that's
with
not in.
girls volleyball as well.
Yeah,
There's
there's,
girls
that
volleyball.
doesn't say that, and there's nothing of that in the approved, and this is where I have to kind of, I don't really understand, like we had that discourse that night and like felt really collaborative and reading through this, but I was kind of in the understanding, I think all of us were, that this was what we had decided. And so that's what, we were working off of was these decisions that we had thought were approved. But there's nothing in any policy that you have or that the parents have at home that says that someone is ineligible to try out.
No, it
That's
does in
not-
that, because, and that was brought up even in that meeting, where it says competitive eligibility in the very first part. It states that they need to be eligible, and that was even brought up in the meeting. So it's in the very first, I want to say, I gave mine away, so I don't have the copy. If you look at the policy that's in the handbook, and then you look at the one in September, it's in the actual policy itself.
Is that students participating in the above activities are required to follow school rules and athletic program requirements?
Are we looking at the athletic program guidelines, what we're looking at?
So
I have the two
we're-
versions. Those two. Why, I don't know what the board approved.
So where it says competitive sports policy under eligibility requirements, and it has the ed code, and then it says competitive sports eligibility. It says participation in fall extracurricular activities will be based on the third trimester grades from the previous year. And then you go down and it says students are evaluated for academic at trimester and progress reports and report cards. No athlete is permitted to try out for a team if they have any current grade of F or they are below a 2.0 on the day of tryouts, and you would use the progress. So that's where it said that. Right?
Well, I think I'm looking at even the third, I don't know.
So, well, that's because one is in the handbook.
I don't know
one
which one
says-
is which.
This is the one.
I think this one we worked on, there was some that didn't make it to the handbook, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, it says board approved, so I have no idea. So I think one of your two also says board approved, and it's different.
Question, does the progress report, so this is a special circumstance, but the process changed.
Mhm.
So are those grades combined? I think they said after combining, it averaged to a C, so my question is, was he within that grading period, even though the class was changed? Does that mean that, okay, so it goes from the easier course to a harder course for 3 weeks, and then, my question is are we combining the two, and is that the result, or was this missed?
So I actually think, and just based on the dates, I think it was his literature and English course.
It was English, literature, and science.
That was the factor, not the math, because he would, on his progress report, he still had the higher grade. That's not what made him part of the academic recovery. It wasn't the math, it was the English. And it was the literature, it was the ELA grade.
And science.
And
And science.
so, yeah, I know it struggles in those. It was under my impression that we were all kind of working towards getting those grades up, and I know that the teacher, the English teacher, was working with them. She mentioned that in our SST, and working with them to get those grades up. And he was under the impression for the purpose of eligibility, which is a motivation, but not the only reason he should be getting his grades up, right? So he worked hard to get there. And there's some, I think we did improve on behavior. And again, it was just kind of this back and forth. It was just a lot of.
To the
discrepancies.
best of my, I don't know, I don't teach, I don't have him, but if there's a factor of behavior, or is that not
So that,
involved?
that was not a part of that evening's discussion, or what was in, is that you couldn't have outstanding X, Y, and Zs for eligibility. That was not, and it didn't come out, because for whatever reason, I did have that in the back of my mind, and then when I listened to the transcript and then read and compared it all, that it was the grades for eligibility was.
And that's
it
how
wasn't
I-
the outstanding. The outstanding came with regard to extracurricular activities and what you could attend and things like that.
Can I do that after that?
Sure.
So it was initially the grades. Okay? And it was very clear that if he improved his grades by some of the staff members, that he would be eligible. Well, he improved the grades, but he went back. Now it wasn't the grades that kept him eligible. It was a behavior factor. That was the next hurdle to clear. Okay? So it wasn't this grade thing, at the time, it was like, okay, we're getting your grades up now. Now you're gonna be eligible. We get there, and then it's a behavior thing. He's got too many detentions, which didn't see anywhere in the policy, that being a factor. So having said that, Mrs. Shaw lined up a full day dedicated to this detention. So because what the reasoning was you can't play if you have this many detentions. Okay, so I met with Miss Lisa Shaw, and she said, we want to get a fresh start coming out of the break. And so what I'm going to do is dedicate a full day to make up all these detentions. Well, he did that. And Grant, like, I'm not going to, I know my son can be very disruptive. So I just, I'm not at school. I don't see everything. However, maybe his behavior wasn't the best. I don't know. He made up the detention, and then, at this point, we were under the impression that he was going to be eligible. And let me go back a little bit. We had requested an SST prior to tryouts, and then with the holiday coming up, we couldn't make that happen. And so I do believe if we would nip this in the bud, have the SST, I feel a lot better after the meeting. I could have definitely corrected some of this stuff, as I was unaware of a lot of the behaviors and policies. I mean, I'm sure it's my responsibility to look into this stuff. However, I just, it seems like we're kind of hopping around for the reasoning. And, the end result is I know what's best for my son, and my question, and I don't expect any, extra strike for, I'm not asking for any of that. But are we focused on what's best for each kid as an individual? Or, there's obviously a lot of discrepancy in the new policy. There's some great change. But we kind of laid out this roadmap for him, what he had to do, and he worked hard for it. He did work hard for it. I know that, and he was serious about it. And basketball is his thing, and sports. My kid needs that. I know he needs it, and so he needs it for confidence, for self-worth, self-esteem. And what happens here, because it happened to me here, is when you take a kid, and he's kind of troubled. I was kind of troubled. But then all of a sudden, as staff and adults, we're just, people in the business of child development and teaching kids. We take them and we go, okay, you can't play. You can, but you don't fit in. Where's that kid gonna go? And I see my son start to go down. And that's alarming. I mean, regardless of policy, I mean, obviously there's some discrepancies here. And, you know, like we're in following rules and everything. As a parent, you know, I don't want to see my son go in a downward spiral. He has been diagnosed with some OCD a while ago and anxiety, general depression. And he's being treated for that, running counseling and everything. But to watch him just kind of, you know, just withdraw. And then the behavior became when he was ineligible. You know, he did some things that is not acceptable, and I'm just finding out about the justice teacher out of that too. And so on one end, I got these staff members going, "Dude, this kid's great. I get like he's awesome. He's one of my favorites." And on the other end, I'm going, he's dropping F-bombs. And you know, I worked with him to get him eligible through his grades. I felt like I helped him, but then he just didn't care anymore. Well, I think the reason he didn't care is because he worked hard for something and received a reward, and you know, there was just too much. As if there was just too much. It wasn't really looked at. I don't think you know, from a perspective that it had to be, or the policy wasn't there. It was just kind of felt like a wing. Feels like a wing kind of thing. Like, oh, you know, it was the grades. Now it's not. Now it's your discipline. We fix that, but now it's too late or something of that nature. But it's the grades again. Now that we're here, that's the reason. And so I'm just, you know, like I said, I don't want to see my son depressed in 7th grade, you know, because he didn't get to play basketball. You know, so the question is like, you know, and just to add to that, to finish on kind of a good note, I've had this discussion with him. We're turning this into a positive thing. We're not, or his behavior is going to change, and we're focused on getting him on the honor roll and getting him in the, you know, I mean, and I really appreciate the staff that believe in my son and have good things to say. I mean, I can't say enough. There's some very good teachers here. I mean, you know, it's just, we're going to turn this into a positive thing. I just want to make sure that maybe we don't come across this again with any other child. And maybe, you know, set something up so we get some notification for, you know, an athlete that maybe struggling before tryouts. You know, maybe we could notify the parent. Like, look, if he wants to play basketball, he reads the tryouts. He needs to, you know, on the ball. You know, the what do you call it? The academic recovery. Okay, so I was unaware of anything like that. And I do take responsibility for not being more involved. At the time, I was working this job for my neighbor who had to get a renter in, and I was literally working 16-hour days. It was next door, but I didn't see my kids for like a week because he had a tenant moving in, and so we had to get this job done. And so timing is everything. It was unfortunate that I missed out on that portion, and I do take accountability for not being more involved in or aware of the policy. I figured he was going to be playing basketball. I mean, I figured it's his favorite sport. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Conrad, yes, Chris, does your son play spring sport?
He did. He doesn't want to play.
What was it?
Baseball. Yeah, he was good in baseball. We had kind of a negative experience this last season, unfortunately, and you know, he tells me that he just doesn't want to play because it's boring. He's not fast enough. But I think there's some of the things that took place during the season play a factor into him not wanting to play. So
Does he consider track and field a possibility?
he does. So I can remember myself at this age, and I can remember he's kind of a spitting image of me, and he's kind of lazy like I was. I didn't get until I was a freshman playing football at Bret Hart. I didn't know what hard work was, Hell Week, you know. And after that, I was all about it. I mean, I loved it. I ran home. I ran from school to my house, and then we come up here to play basketball. You know, when we weren't practicing football, and then I'd run from here home. So I think that's something that he could definitely, for the future, I always joke with him, I tell him, look, I can force you to do this. I can't force you. Of course I don't want to, but I definitely think that, the influence can get him to do track, but it would be difficult.
Well, I hope you use it a shot because the staff here is very, very good. Yeah, very positive and he's gonna be around other student athletes and that will wear on to him, I think.
It's a pretty long season too, isn't it?
Pretty short,
Is it
actually.
really?
It's very limited, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, it's a social sport too.
I was gonna say,
because
it's the social
during-
hour.
It's during the day, they get to go to Avery, they get to go to Brat Hart, they get to go to places and they're with all kids from all the other schools.
The way I sell track to
Yes.
kids is like,
You're not.
I don't
traveling
even talk about the
classroom.
sport. I'm like, you guys just
Yeah,
gotta go.
I don't
Everybody
either.
joins track. You just do it.
Springtime,
Everybody joins
sunshine.
the track.
Yeah.
That is what you do.
For sure. I do know that he's. So
Run a little, be with your
Yeah.
friends for the rest of the day.
I
Do events.
didn't get my athleticism out of effect. I was slow, kind of lethargic, and so I didn't do well. And he thinks he's pretty slow, but when he becomes a freshman, I do believe that it'll come. So I think he wouldn't want to do it because thinks he wouldn't be successful at it. But that's not. I don't think that's an excuse for not trying something. So I'll definitely encourage that for sure. We do have him in karate, and he likes it, but he wants to try boxing. There's a boxing. Yeah, he likes the boxing. The karate palm punching is not so much easier. So that's very beneficial. It's something that's discipline. Karate is great. That's been something that has kind of counterbalanced this season. Thank you for that suggestion.
It sounds like you're setting him up to be very successful.
That's the idea. I really, I want him to be, as a parent who went to the school, I'm alumni, my parents went to the school. I can remember the feelings not fitting in, and it was detrimental to my high school career where I struggled and even beyond. So I think at this age, where they're at, developing what we tell them subconsciously, is so crucial to his success. I really believe that because, it's funny, I went to school at Columbia in 2019 and I believed things about myself that were untrue until I went back to Columbia. That's a real thing. And it's like, holy cow, I'm not a moron. Because there was actually, that's what I was kind of told. You can't read comprehension. Turns out that wasn't true. But I believed it for 23 years. So.
Okay. We
So
have
you have a
several-
comments, we have a comment from Miss Oliver. You want me to read it out?
Please.
Okay, she says, what is unclear to me in the athletic eligibility policy is aside from grades, we are concerned about behavior issues, such as suspensions that happen prior to tryouts. In the past, to my knowledge, a suspension would make students ineligible for extracurricular activities for that trimester.
Yeah, it doesn't say that. And that is my biggest concern. And again, moving back to completely removing this kind of like, I feel like a very specific, almost anomaly in a way of the grade change or discrepancy, like very specific situation. I don't see how you can show up to tryouts with unserved detention hours or prior suspensions within the same trimester, or with grades that need to be at least a 60% in order to participate. I guess as a teacher, just speaking completely from my opinion, I would hate standing behind a policy that says you can try out if you're failing classes, and you can try out if you have unserved detention hours or previous suspensions within the last grading period. That's,
Can I suggest something? So I imagine, you know, some of you got pretty good grades in school. Some people, or kids, including myself, wasn't as good at school. So when you take a kid that's, you know, like, that's not as good at school, that's already kind of struggling. Okay, and he's looking forward to the season, and like, the kid's already struggling. This is something that could benefit. This gives him motivation to improve grades. I mean, you know, it's even with the, for example, so we got a kid that's doing, that got caught smoking a vape, okay, or let's say you got caught smoking pot. Okay, you can't play. Well, what's he gonna do? What are we doing with this kid? Where's he gonna go? I mean, you know where he's gonna go, and this is the way it is, man. He's gonna go smoke more pot and try other things. I mean, is it, and as a staff, as adults, I mean, I understand you can't do drugs, you can't smoke, or I understand that policy. At the same time, it's like, what are we setting this kid up? I mean, if we had a little more understanding of like, okay, these are the kids that need sports. These are the kids that maybe don't have a healthy home life. Maybe they're trying to connect somewhere, and he's already struggling if he's smoking pot at 13 years old. Let's face it, he's having some struggles, whether it be home life, whatever, socially, academic, whatever it may be, his struggles are. If you're smoking pot or smoking a vape at 13, you know, you are probably not doing so well. So sports is something that should help these kids. I think we need to look at this a little deeper and ask, well, why did you smoke? Why would you? Make that connection with these kids and help them along the way so they don't continue this path of destruction, of drug use, because we know that vape's a gateway to pot, pot's a gateway to hard drugs. I can only say this because I've lived it and I've seen it. And I do believe that it's important to, you know, not pigeonhole a kid if he's smoking, if he's doing bad things, but ask him, don't just, that's it, you're done, bud. You don't, you know, what's going on? A simple question, hey, what's going on? Can we help you? Let's, you know, and let's maybe, if you can't be on the team, okay, well, let's try, let's just not give up on it. It happens, we give up on them, they give up on them.
One's giving up on anybody.
Well, I know, but it's just, this is just a suggestion.
I think I would provide a counter that you can complete, like you can counter that as well, you know? I think it's our responsibility to provide a net, if you will, when the punishment, if punishment is much softer at Mark Twain than what you would get when you went to the high school, for being allowed to continue to play a sport after doing something like that, or not being upheld to any consequence for doing those types of things, is much harsher when they go to the high school. When I was in middle school, I was in 7th grade, and the 8th grade boys, they used to go to Tahoe for their trip, both Mark Twain and Avery. And when I was in 7th grade, the 8th grade boys, their assistant coach brought weed with them up to Tahoe, and they pretty much lost their season and most of their team.
The assistant coach.
Yes, it was a real scandal. And those, I don't know about the other two. They had moved since when I caught up with them in high school, but the 4 boys that they were amazing athletes in high school, all league. Some of them went on to be like professional baseball offers. Very keen in high school. It was a really adamant decision that I guess I'll just put it in a nutshell. They had learned their lesson. I feel so like ridiculous saying that, but it was.
There's I believe there is value.
You know, I
There's
completely
consequence.
understand your point, and that's what makes stuff like this really difficult. You know.
I just, you know, I'm not asking for leniency. I do believe there has to be punishment. Absolutely. But let's not just, you know, pigeonhole these kids is what I'm thinking. I know I can think of a couple kids in my son's class that, you know, they don't play sports because, and they're struggling, that some of the kids have been through a lot already. And I look at it and I go, man, you know, this poor kid's struggling already, his home life's not the best. And you just kind of push him aside, where it'd be cool, you know, and I would like to have a part in that. I would like to advocate for that too. Really, you know, I'd like to volunteer at the school. Like, you know, this is home to me. I grew up right down the street, and you know, I see just even if it was one kid, you know, it would be worth it for me to invest the volunteer time and come on campus and just kind of whatever I can do to just maybe help guidance. I think it's important that they have an outlet because they're already struggling. So,
we gotta find another outlet for the kids versus the sports, because the sport is considered it's not right. It's a privilege to be able to do.
I agree.
So you have to have good grades, you have to have good attendance, you have to have all of these things, and that's what sports. It's pushing for, right?
And
You have to be a good listener to play baseball. You have to be a good listener to play basketball. You have to do what your coach says. When your coach tells you to do it, you have to practice the plays. So you have to read the playbook. You know, but all of that has to go into with what the school does as well. And I'm with you. I'm a blue collar. I got C's all the way through high school. I went to Bret Hart. I got to watch Josh play baseball. He got to watch me play baseball. I don't know if he remembers. But that's why I'm here now. I was a horrible student. I worked with Cody for a while at Cal Fire doing some stuff. Now it's my turn to help these kids and try and make it better and make it easier. So, but I don't see sports is not a privilege. It's a privilege. It's not a right.
Yeah, absolutely. So and having said that, you know, I agree. I think it can take kids.
Oh, I completely agree.
And
I live for it.
And like I said, you know, I'm not looking for any special treatment.
Yeah, I just think there has to be responsibility. involved.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to clarify one thing, because when I looked through this and saw this up on our agenda. I pulled Bret Hart athletic policy, and we are certainly with the proposed policy here, absolutely more strict than Bret Hart. So there's no like, they go over to the high school and it's like one and done. There's a whole, even getting caught for drugs is.
They have to go to the class
Yes.
and then it's up
Yeah.
to the teacher. It's up, not
Yeah.
to the teacher, sorry.
It's
up
not
to the
automatic
coach.
removal.
It's subject to coach, because
Yeah.
our girls' basketball season, all 4 years was a no tolerance policy for anything.
Sure.
I remember it being if you were even caught at a party and you were just there in attendance, it was a zero tolerance policy. They have a lot more leniency to the coaches, which I think is a little hard to apply at Mark Twain.
Personally, I have found that to not be the case as a coach at Bret Hart.
I don't think it's lined out anymore that way, because it certainly does not fall back on the coaches and all of these policies here.
And the reason we had motivation for
So-
discussing it then was because it's become so rampant and because it's
Yeah.
so difficult to, and this is in particular to drug paraphernalia and drug usage. There's there is no body, no crime. It is impossible to catch pretty much a student unless you see them using a drug or you see them with a vape.
Speaking as a coach at Bret Hart, 2 years ago, we had a student bait, a player on varsity, and she was removed.
Same.
from the
It
team.
all
Same.
depends on administration, I was reading, so it's a possible social probation. If a student athlete is placed on social probation, they will be removed from the team. But then it falls back to a strong administrative team to say, is this kid, because there have been kids caught vaping there that have not been removed from the team. So is that a first time offender? Is it a fourth time offender?
It's the first time
it's-
offender for
yeah.
us.
But are we worried? I mean, shouldn't we be worried about a first time offender in middle school?
Yeah, that's my
I'm
point.
not saying that we shouldn't, that wasn't what I was implying.
Well,
That's
Well,
I was just stating what Bret Hart was enforcing. So we could all have different I mean, Luca had somebody on his basketball team that they quite often and wasn't removed from the team. So I do think that it falls back on administration and coaches. But as far as like some of it, it's an enforcement issue, but as far as what's lined out in their, 16-page discipline matrix, There are first, second max offenses for almost everything you could ever find in ed code. They did this with a lot of thought, I'll say.
Let's face it, they were making bubblegum flavored vapes. I mean, the tobacco companies are kind of designed, they removed them, they actually made them illegal. So, between that and COVID, things are kind of different. In regards to the vape. I mean, it's astounding that they actually have all these, sweet flavors. And ironically, they made them illegal just like last week. You can't buy them anymore. There's no longer flavored. It's all tobacco flavored vapes now. So you'd be amazed at how many kids are probably vaping. I mean,
It's a lot. It's a lot of these.
Purple things back, because
Yeah.
we've had a great discussion, a lot of input, very much appreciated. But we have this multi-pronged recommendation from Ms. Paula. And I don't know, Diane, if you want to do it, one section of Patsy, 4 items on here. Or
Is we're reading it out loud one more time, you think?
the recommendations from
Yes.
Paula.
I think we should. I mean,
I don't know whether you want to do one motion.
I think it should be one motion, but I think we should review it one more time of what's here. Okay, so we're gonna start with item number 1. The superintendent further recommends to the school site, well, actually, I need to go back up because that talks about grades. After much review, the superintendent is recommending the following actions despite the confusion of the 2 policies. Okay, the policy listed in the handbook and parent signed acknowledgement be upheld for the tobacco instance, as that was the indication in the August discussion. And parents had knowledge by way of a signature according to the AD. For the eligibility situation, the student was not eligible at the time of tryout / signups, as there was less than 2.0 with an F on the progress reports. Okay, the student did not attend the academic recovery opportunities. The superintendent further recommends the school site and board to number 1, when changes are made prior to the vote, any and all changes are to be read by either the district admin assistant, board clerk, or board vice president as determined prior to calling for a motion by the board president. Number 2, sites are to retain copies of all progress reports for students with Fs or less than a 2.0 GPA until the next progress report dissemination. 3, for the remainder of the 22-23 school year, follow the policy document from September 8th with the amendment that any student with a drug / tobacco suspension for use or possession will be removed from the team for the remainder of the season. 4, board should institute the following annual calendar review of handbook policies and the actual handbook document to ensure accuracy. The board will have an April board meeting, provide the current student, parent, staff, district handbook with any policies that were instituted after printing. Invite the staff, the public, administrators, and board to request portions to be reviewed with any considered changes by the board policy committee. The June board meeting, board policy committee introduced proposed drafts of the policy reviewed. The August board meeting, entire handbook reviewed as an action item to make sure that the policies reflect actions taken by the committee in April and decisions of the board regarding the April policy review in June.
And a lot of this embodies, I think, communication, which is, I think, what is in the way.
That's the crux of is the communication.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it addresses a lot of it, and that in the transcripts, it's mentioned that this has been, will probably continue to be a living document, which will be changing. We will get input from staff, from the community, from the board. Things will change, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's, again, we're making steps forward. I read through the transcript, and bless you guys for typing this out. That meeting was very, very intense, but it was great.
I thought it was so great. I thought it was so great. And I
I-
do have to clarify for myself, when that happened, were we right in thinking that that was approved?
I think in general, yes. I do
Okay.
think it's-
Okay, I just want to.
As far as we can tell. by
Yes,
consensus.
please.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation from the policy.
Do I hear a second?
Um, I will, if we can talk about. Number three, if you brought up a good point, I mean. We don't necessarily want to go out the gates for the first time offense, going up for a duty or something like that, so. Removing him for the remainder of the season. Maybe might be a little bit too harsh.
Comments or?
Right now I have a motion,
Right,
but,
discussion, I guess.
well, we don't have a second yet for my motion.
That's correct.
Can we change this at all?
We have to discuss it.
Well, after a motion and second, then we have a discussion, but we don't have a second.
We don't have a second.
Technically, you can't change my motion. You could ask you to make a friendly, point of order.
Point of order.
Rescind that motion.
No, I couldn't.
Let it die.
Amendments to it, I could do that, but right now, I'm gonna go with the motion as read, so if it dies, it dies, et cetera. So I'm used to it.
Oh my God.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Timothy,
Discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I like what Josh brought up with, punishing a first time offense student, for vaping. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of any of that sort of stuff, but, a punishment definitely needs to be presented to the student, whether it's a week being gone, a game, 2 games, whatever the case may be, something needs to be there. I don't think removing, or even if this is a second time, third time, fourth time offense, okay, yeah, let's get off the team. But if this is the first time ordeal, then I think it's a
You
little
mind,
harsh.
yes, I don't.
At this point, the discussion is only between the board members, I'm sorry, because they have a motion on the table.
Oh, that's.
So. I hear you're saying that you feel that the punishment is too strict for a first offense, but if they already know they're not supposed to do it. Whether it's this or drinking or drugs.
I would completely agree with you if we were at the high school or college level. You're currently dealing with young children that are making poor choices every day. Yeah, we're trying to educate them to make good choices. But at the same token, we still need to be able to discipline them without taking something completely away.
What would be your alternative suggestion?
A suspension for a game or 2, or removal from the program for a week.
So just by nature, just for, again, point of clarification, the current policy of September 8th, which is what I'm suggesting, is that after the suspension days, it's another 5 days that they sit out of practice.
So 2
So,
weeks.
well, it depends on how long the person is suspended. So they have their suspension days, which they can't do anything, and then it's another 5 school days that they're out
Right, but
currently.
this is saying to
Yeah,
be
that's
removed
not-
from the team for the remainder of the
No,
season.
I know, but I'm saying to your point,
okay.
instead of, I mean, if you just went to, if you have a suspendable offense, no matter what it is, and go, and don't put that, that would answer that question.
Okay, I like that better than the removal for the season.
Why does it say that? Your removal.
So again, during the discussion in August, we had in our draft, because vaping and drug use and smoking was through the roof. It was pretty crazy. And so, and we feel like our student athletes, need to be drug free just for basic general well-being of their physical body, but also in getting them, really to understand, because we do have, Jason's absolutely right. We have 13-year-olds that are fully addicted. And so by that time, so we wanted something really, really strong. And so that was in the draft. Then in the September, in the August 11th and August 8th, it was not, that statement was not in there. And I, in that discussion specifically, asked for it to be placed in there. And there was a huge discussion around the board saying we can handle, we're okay with the drug part being removed and having really a strong, just given what's happening with our kids. So they really did that, but we're not willing to do fighting, because I had actually asked fighting. And so what I put in my proposal, which Scott picked up on, and my recommendation is follow the September 8th for everything, with the addition of being removed from the team. However, if you don't want that in there, if you feel it's too strong, then I would say you're reverting back to just the September as it's written, because it's not in there currently.
Don't you think that would help a lot?
Okay, so that's. So what you have to do now
Okay, well, is there any more
Because
more
he's-
discussion?
is, you can continue discussing it until you feel that you've discussed it. And to the end, and then you can, because it was moved and seconded.
Not seconded.
No, it was Christie seconded
Oh,
it.
you did. Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then
Yay.
Scott proceeded in his discussion to try and convince you
Right.
all to not approve this particular motion.
Exactly.
And so you still need to vote once you call for discussion to end. And if it doesn't pass, then you're going to come up with a new motion.
Do we have any further discussion?
And the other one.
I agree with Scott. I do think that it's too strict. I really do. And not necessarily at the very first meeting or second meeting, but upon a little bit more research and, stuff like that. Cause I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. No big deal. But I definitely agree with you. I just don't know if we're gonna solve anything really right at this moment, and to not have something in place. I mean, corrections are great. We can certainly do that if we go forward. I just don't know if we're gonna revise it in April again, like it's then it's gonna be kind of jumbled with what is girls basketball had a different one than boys basketball, and then track is gonna probably have something different because we're gonna look at it in April.
Then we make it all.
I just meant previous season, like girls basketball. They were playing under a different discipline policy than what we're
gotcha.
thinking right now. So,
However, neither of these two particular incidents were present in girls basketball,
Sure.
so. It wouldn't have not changed their season.
The only way I see this being a removal from the season is if this is like a third time offense throughout the entire school year, not during that one particular season. So if this is an ongoing issue, and this is their second, third, fourth offense in the school, year, then take them out of sports. But if this is the first offense at all, then I think removing it for the season is too hard.
See, I think the first offense I can understand, but I think if they're going the second, third, and fourth, then they're losing that privilege. They know when they sign up to go into it that there's certain expectations from them, and we're giving them the opportunity. We're even giving them forgiveness the first time, and hoping that, kids make mistakes, they make mistakes. This way, they can really straighten themselves up when they're lucky. Because if they get caught again, that's it.
I agree with you, see, they're gonna get in trouble throughout the entire school year, that's what I'm saying, so.
But then they're also going to be disruptive to all the other kids on the team that are trying to respond.
I completely agree with that.
So I know it's a really hard thing. I wish we had another answer, but me personally, I think the one time, yes. And then, have a talking to the child and see if we can come back on track. We want them to succeed. But second, third, and fourth, I think. not. Trying to learn next.
I totally agree with that, and I think, just reading Bret Hart's policy, like the diversion programs that they have in place, and we don't have in place. Is, I think is what allows them to sort of have that, maybe like. Social probation, but then you enroll in a tobacco diversion program. You test positive on a drug test, you're in a drug program, like. When you fight, you go to whatever, I can't remember what it's called, but like there's different things. There's different things that they have in place. They can support their students with not making that decision, that poor choice again. We just don't have it. We don't have that. So for me, that's kind of hard, anything past like the first chance. Okay, that's great. I would love to see something like an online tobacco course or something that they have to do to earn that back, even a social probation thing, like I said, Bret Hart has. Because they do think it's a little convoluted with what they can do, but that is like something fighting that much off instead of like the straight houses.
When we're done with your discussion, do we go immediately to vote, or can we also hear from the crowd?
If she calls discussion and she allows the crowd to talk to you, but when you guys are discussing what's
Right,
motions
then they
made,
don't,
they
right.
can't.
Gotcha.
But if you open it back up to, then you can do that. It's up to you guys. But,
Is there any further discussion? Public?
I wrestle with this one for all the reasons that are on the table. What do you do? This last one kept me up nights. What else can you do? But here's the reality. By the time I catch them once, they've been smoking 3, 4, 5, or 6 times. So I might really think, oh, here's one more chance. Another 3 or 4 weeks or months probably, because they're really adept at hiding, and I am not doing cavity searches. But I mean, and so I think when we sat down and said, this is it, that they really, it's like, it's bad for you. It's not good. It's not good for the team. It's not good for Martin. But if you continue along this path, you could be giving a lot more than just 7th or 8th grade basketball, because it takes us so long to actually catch up with them. I mean, I know who my high flyers are, and I don't know about you. I literally can't catch them.
So what are you gonna do when you come across a student that you know is a really good student that has never done this before in the past, playing the sport, and you catch them doing it? And you move into the team for the rest of the year?
Yes. Yes. And there's something to be said for, I kind of have them learn this lesson now.
yes.
Then get to high school where there's so much more peer pressure, because I will tell you, in the conversations that I had, it was, why weren't you with your team? What was your team doing? Why aren't we? And then I sat down with the coach, and then I sat down with the AD and said, why aren't we building our teams more? Why was there a period of time when that person wasn't with your team during a season? What are you doing off season to help build that team? So all those other pieces that go with it.
You're saving
I
also a lot
would-
of kids too with that, the effects, I mean,
And it's,
they sell it at school, they,
that's,
it is, I have kids that you can, either, you can see that they are in a state in my
Under the
class,
influence.
they are under the influence daily, they are, so that is the perspective of where it might be seemingly harsh, but it's really sad to be almost kind of powerless in a situation where, maybe disciplining one student, that might seemingly be harsh, saves a lot of other kids. That's like a widespread lesson at that point.
I was, go ahead, half a sec. And we don't have access to the diversion program.
There's
So
no dogs, there's no,
I mean,
sense of
and
can't
Lori,
be backpack.
but
It's-
Lori Oliver and I have tried.
We do have access to diversion programs because I used them last year with students that I caught vaping, and it's through Tupe. Tupe has them online and they're not great.
Or in
And
person.
they're not in person and they're not great, but we have access to them. And I sat with a group of 4 girls who were caught, and we sat for 4 hours and did a diversion class that was online. And that was part of their, punishment for getting caught for vaping, discipline, not punishment, discipline for vaping and cessation program, right? And I sat and I watched it and I thought, if I was a kid that was vaping and had been vaping for how long, and was addicted to it, I'm not really certain that my 4 hours of sitting with Mrs. Tuthill and talking about, and like.
Life changing.
Yeah, I don't know, it's life changing for them. I also have taught for 14 years tobacco and drug and anti-alcohol programs for years. And I've watched kids leave me and go across the street at nights, right? And I see them vaping and I roll my window down and I'm like, so I also know that Bret Hart cessation program isn't the cure all either, right? And the other problem I have with this too is, we suspend them for a week, and as a coach, I have a hard time with a kid coming back after 5 days of missing practice. And they've missed my instruction, right? They've missed the team building piece of it. I have kids that have worked hard for 5 days, and that might be a great athlete, right? And I know as a coach, I'm going to look at that kid a little bit differently in the sense that they missed 5 days and that I've had kids working hard, right? I mean, that's part of my values and morals as the coach. I also know there are other coaches that are going to look at that kid and say that kid's a really good athlete, and they're going to go right back to starting over all these other kids. And what message are we sending to those players that weren't making that same choice for that first time or whatever the first time they got caught? So there has to be something. And the reason why Bret Hart has such a hard time with this problem, and their sensors aren't working in their bathroom, and they have kids vaping in cars, and they have kids vaping in class, and is because kids are starting it really young, and they're starting it in our junior high, and they're starting it at the middle school at Avery. And if we don't start doing something,
They're not starting at our junior high.
no, they're starting it in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, because if I'm catching them in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, I know it's not like scared straight doesn't work, right? But we have to have some kind of a harsh consequence, and we also have to follow it up with parent communication, and we have to follow it up with education, and we have to follow it up with lots of things. So just because it's written in that policy that we're going to remove a student from the team doesn't mean we're not also following it up with a safety net with that student too, so it's not written there, but we are following it up with safety nets. I think that's my point. We are following it up with safety nets. I have had to remove a student from a team because of vaping, but I have had to remove them from the bus for vaping. And then I've had to follow it up with a lot of, safety net with that. And then following so that when they get to the junior high, we're not removing vapes from backpacks and selling and so I don't know.
Can I suggest something? Sorry. Just real quick, I just want to, I'm a recovering addict, okay? And I got 7 years. And I'm not ashamed to say this, because I've been through this, I'm very well educated in how addiction works. And even though I'm educated, it's still a baffling thing. It's still very confusing. How can a kid do something knowing it's wrong, knowing there's going to be consequences, but still do it? And when you have a child that doesn't understand this, I mean, this is a story for adults. When you have a child that doesn't, it's like a baby rattlesnake. They can't control the venom. They're more dangerous than a full-grown rattlesnake. The same thing is going on with the dopamine. They get addicted to something, and it's like the dopamine They can't control it. It's like the phones. Try taking the phone away from the kid, they're gonna grab it. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, you gotta physically like move it. Same thing with the kid. We got this, so this is what they found to work. And they do this in other countries. And as a society, no one's gonna agree with me. I don't care because I'm into what works and what's effective and what can benefit the kid. An open-ended conversation, having a kid feel like he can honestly come to you and be like, look, I'm vaping. Look, I'm vaping and, just, this is what I had to do with my son. Hey, Jay, the biggest thing is you be honest, man. Be honest and you'd be surprised on the reaction you get from me. And I got the truth out of that kid and it's done. Now I can ask him, hey, did you vape today? And I can get an honest answer. If we continue on this path with this, like, punishment, what are they gonna do? We know that's not effective. There's county programs for adults trying to get their children back that are not 3% successful. What we've been doing as society, judicial system, schools, isn't working in terms of addiction. And I'd be happy to advocate, my knowledge in this for some of these kids that are struggling, because there are kids that are addicted. And at that age, I mean, they can't help it. Addiction, they're just like, you're gonna get busted, they're still gonna do it, unless we can discuss it, talk about the dangers of it, talk about where it leads. Talk to a guy that's been through it and can tell you, you keep on this path, you're gonna go to jail, you're gonna get out of jail, and you're gonna be in the system, you're gonna go back to jail, and it's gonna be a hell of a lot harder when you're, an adult trying to get out of the system that is designed to keep you in. So, I mean, it's, if we were, if little Johnny had a problem, and Johnny felt like he could talk to somebody, an adult, then we could, connect with that kid. It's about connecting. And when we discipline, we're disciplined. We're pigeonholing. We're like, no, you're not good. You can't fit in. Where's he gonna go? And that's about all I can say. But on further discussion, maybe we can get that on the agenda, because I'd be happy to share some of my ideas on what we could do to improve this kind of behavior.
Thank you.
Ms. Diane, I'd like to call for a vote.
Yes, I was gonna say, we're gonna end discussion now, and I'd like to vote, please, Timothy.
Aye.
Do you know,
Scott?
wait, can I just start? Do you guys know what you're voting on?
Voting for
As it's written.
as written, right? And I'm saying aye.
Scott?
No.
Christie? No. Diane, aye. We have a 2-2 does not pass, and with one absent. So perhaps we need to bring this back, or no?
The next,
Well, your sites need to know what the policy is. So you need to, because that's why we're in this mess.
Right.
Is because we don't currently have, so if I could, since I wrote the recommendation that Timothy did, might I make the recommendation now that you follow the September 8th policy as written? With,
I'd like to make the motion to follow the September 8th one as written, so not have the amendments. And then I'd like to put on the, that's not part of my motion, but to put on the future agenda items for be looking at that amendment.
Do I hear a second on this?
I just want to read it real quick.
Yeah, can you know what's on that?
Understand.
What do you guys do?
Approve this one. The September 8th one, I'm gonna
I have two that were board approved on the
So-
same date for this year.
what you
And
have
they're
to do, no, what you have to do is look at the board
I've never seen
agenda.
September 8th, though.
I have
You,
seen
you
August.
actually, so the
11th.
September 8th was the August 11th, so it is in the order.
I don't have the board packet, so.
The one that says team size at the bottom. You know which one it is? So they're talking about whatever's in September. And I said, yeah, so can you pull that one up? Like, can you just be firm on which one it is?
So.
That's the August.
But the thing that is the September one that is approved was the August 11th dated one.
Right.
So, can you show, which one? It's August eighth, I mean, September, I know. September. You do, I put them all in, it is being, your September eighth is the very first, should have been the very first one in your packet. That you guys may have,
What page would that be?
It will say August, and it has a blue and yellow line in it.
Oh,
It's the one that's highlighted with blue and yellow.
Yep.
Which one? Yes.
okay.
oh, so with highlighting in it.
So one.
Yes.
Okay. that's good to
That
know.
is because it was the August 11th taken forward to September.
Ironically, this one
Yes.
doesn't say approved to me.
Can I take a second? Sure that- Right there.
September 9th.
So right now, they're just trying to confirm what policy we're
Oh,
acting, we're going to be using as our umbrella policy until we decide on. what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So we can sit down and
Look at it.
Supporting documents, September eighth,
Because that's
yeah.
kind of why
There,
it's
that was in there.
It's just- Yeah,
Okay,
just
she's
right now,
pulling
we're just
it up.
passive, like, what are the rules? If we don't have a consistent knowledge of what the rules are.
Oh, how much? Share screen. Actually, I'm not connected to this. No.
I'm in Rock and Park Place because I'm working on a high school. High school. But they do this, if you are ineligible, it's like, so for baseball. You're ineligible, and you can practice with them. Like, let's say it's not, even starts January 31st. So we will practice, we do one of these, January 31st. March 15th. March 15th, when grade review or those-
Yeah.
your grade eligible, then you can guess. That's. Or your teacher. No, well, no, work. Yeah. So like, and then. for football, like, I would use this.
Yeah.
This is. with football, this is- we have saw music, yeah. It's a freshman in the soccer group, we would really, you know, this- Second semester.
Still like it's Friday. I wouldn't been asking about it. Try not to get you again. That's what they had, that's what I right? So I get the email from the first. So you get closer to the it's more than it's been for 23rd, and then we have 5 days like ours. The honor roll. Thanks, because a lot of them still haven't received because we had the honor roll on 12/1. Assembly. So we get that timeline shortened up.
I think everybody's gonna see.
I don't know if they're in.
So everybody is looking at it with the with the exception of whatever's up.
I'll go back to this Zoom so I can share my screen.
Yeah.
Everybody's.
I think so. Okay, so yes.
Yeah. My sense is.
Can we ask a clarification?
I have this one with the highlighting in it. I don't know if that's what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Okay, because I also have these two, which are also different from each other
Yeah,
as well.
so, right, because one's a drop and one is, has, but with some change. But I don't know where you're on the other
Well,
pages.
So
You got
I
another
was just reading.
page.
Well, I have two backs as well.
Yeah, so I don't know what you'd have to compare.
Yeah.
This is that, so this page is correct,
Okay.
and whatever the next page.
So we
is,
had a
those-
clarification quick on one of your ears and the two.
Oh, sorry.
So it says players who receive 5 or more referrals in a trimester will be removed from the team for the remainder of the trimester. But when it talks about suspension, it doesn't say in a trimester, in a season, anything, so that's all year long. If you get if it's your third suspension and let's say you got one suspension during girls' basketball season and you got a second suspension during boys' basketball, it wasn't a sport though, but you're now playing volleyball and you get your third suspension. If I'm reading this correctly, you are now ineligible to play on the volleyball. Am I correct?
That is my understanding.
Is that the board's understanding? Because it says any player suspended in school or outside of school will be ineligible to participate in the assigned suspension days plus an additional school week. Okay. Any player with a second suspension will be ineligible to participate in the assigned suspension plus an additional 2 school weeks. Any player suspended a third time will be ineligible to participate in any sport-related activity for the remainder of the school year.
Which I think all of them, so this that has the what is it, tobacco drug use, all of the bullets are the same, except for players who receive 5 or more referrals. It's not the same. The wording on one with the tobacco, alcohol, or tobacco drug removal says 3 after-school detentions within the season will be removed. Versus the 5 on the highlighted copy. I'm trying to say, I don't know how to word it, like old new, I don't. The one with the highlights say 5 or more referrals in a trimester, the one without the highlights say 3 after school detentions. So there's only a couple bullet points that are different.
And that was one of, if you look at the transcript, that was one of the huge discussions of that transcript, removing 5 and 6 bullets. And
Right.
so what came out of pages for you guys, 156 and 157, was what I believe was the most accurate depiction of the of that discussion, except for the discussion was pro remove them for drugs and this does not have that. So that's, I would say, the biggest difference.
Can I confirm that where it says if they have any current grade of F or they are below 2.0, we're referring purely to the I'm talking on the front page, it says competitive sports eligibility. We're talking to mid-trimester and trimester grades at that point, correct? Because when it said, it says, I think it's in the highlighted yellow portion, if you scroll down, it says, if they have any current grade of F or they are below, where it says current grade, and I just want to refer, because earlier it talks about academic eligibility at trimester progress reports and trimester report cards. So I just want to confirm, because we do have sports coming up and like new seasons, new tryouts coming up. And I just want to confirm before we have an issue with girls volleyball.
So girls volleyball, wherever girls volleyball is, whatever was closest, either a progress report or a report card to that tryout date is what you will use to determine their
So it's
eligibility.
not necessarily current, it is according to their last trimester or their last progress report or trimester.
Right, we only,
Yes.
yeah, because that is their current grade until they get their
Until
report.
they're
card. So
10-4.
the progress report is current until they get their grade card. Their grade card's current
Okay.
until they get their next progress.
Can I, you know, the issue that, can I suggest that maybe, the policy be, unless there's some kind of class change? Is that, I mean, I don't know.
I think that got handled
Yeah.
correctly. The part that got kind of blown up was the communication piece, but he did
Oh.
the average grades.
Okay, so,
Well, I don't think we need that in there because that's a range.
oh, so that did get addressed and discussed.
So we get back to vote.
Okay.
So I have that motion.
So the new
No,
motion.
there's no motion.
No, we would have to make it.
What I did for that with the, without the amendment.
Oh, okay, and was it seconded?
No, not
Yeah,
yet.
we've gotten that far.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
I didn't
Just have to
hear it,
make
I'm
sure we're
sorry.
on the
I
same
didn't- I
page.
thought
I
we were-
didn't hear the
yeah.
motion.
I didn't know.
So I make a motion to approve recommendations from Paula with the exception of not including the amendment on the drug sale tobacco suspension. So that's gonna be as written on the.
164. I know, I'm sorry, I just really want to be clear.
So no, you're right.
So all you're doing is what I would do is forget Paula's recommendation and just say, I move to approve the athletic program guidelines that are printed on page 156 and 157 of this board packet.
So I can't.
Well, that's whether you want to.
It's not that I don't agree with the drugs and spacing policy, I certainly do, I just think the one and done is too much, so. I would like to see something that.
That's not one and done. That's where we're on.
Right, I know, I'm saying I like this on 164, I don't mind it because there's more detail in it about kids who receive infections in a season. That, and it's not in the 157. There's more detail in here because that was what the conversation ensued, that Copper gives referrals differently than Merton Payne does. And so the details behind some of this are certainly valid, whereas this goes back to something that's a little less specific to schools. So that's why I was trying to compare the two to mold them together without sort of rewriting everything. That would be, because I looked, I mean, there's only 2 bullets that are different. That's it, everything else is pretty much what I've seen the same.
So this is on kids, right, that are on academic recovery as of this grading period. They won't even, you think we should just notify these students like, hey, if you're thinking on playing the volleyball or track, you're not going to play this season because you're on academic recovery during this grade. I mean, I think it'd be nice with the students if they understood. I mean, I'm thinking that here. Is that right? Is that how it reads?
Yeah, because Sarah asked that, so it's 10 school days would cut or wait for a third time ineligible to play any sport related activity.
So grades are due.
You have two sports
is-
that are affected by,
Right.
Which
the-
is
by the reports.
timing.
The timing.
Boys
Boys
basketball.
basketball and girls volleyball.
Volleyball.
Boys basketball is a week before progress reports and report cards, and girls volleyball is a week before report cards.
Well, couldn't girls basketball also be by your 3rd trimester? of the
It
plan?
is. It is. Girls basketball is by
Oh,
your 3rd trimester.
So other than moving that.
My question was, so
So
You
so
can't.
you could
Well,
say,
that's
the
what
only
I'm saying.
opposition I have is the tobacco use possession the first time being removed from the team.
Right.
That's my opposition. Everything else sounds great, but suspended for a 3rd time and eligible for any sports, that's great. 2nd suspension, that sounds fine. The 1 day, 1 week. The after school detentions, Copper, because I think that, like I said, there was a difference between the infractions and detentions, minor infractions, major infractions. There's a difference in wording at each school. So this one on 164 is more specific. My only opposition was the removal from the team after the first offense of tobacco.
Could you just, you said 1 day, 1 week, could you?
Like 1
I'm
day
trying to
is
figure
a
out-
Example, 1 day suspension equals 1 day times 1 week.
Okay,
Is what is
So-
in the
They
164
get suspended for 1 day, they're out of that sport for the whole
for the whole week. It says,
5 school days.
this says 6 total school days. Permits played on
better.
weekends during the
It
6 school days,
should
you're
be
not allowed to
beneficial to
participate.
behavior.
3 day suspension times 3 weeks,
Not
18
practicing
total
outside.
school days.
So the 3 plus the 5 times.
Same as the 5. It is, I'm looking at, I'm comparing both of them because there's
Okay.
more detail in the 164. Than there is in the 157, and it seems like there's more meat in 164 for discipline.
okay.
My only
This is-
opposition
it's-
was
it's-
the
it's-
first time
it's-
being
it's like
removed.
an eight.
This,
If she
that
scrolls
was
down,
it
students
for
are-
me.
So can we make a motion on this for this sheet, remove both sensors?
I
So 5 or more referrals.
No, the 4 on 164 involved in the tobacco.
So use
Right,
all of
something on that
them
side.
except for,
I'm not sure our administrators would probably like to go into a season without having a tobacco drug possession policy. And that was what I mean, certainly it's up to everybody to, you know, figure out what they're comfortable with. For me, I'm, yeah.
well, they're gonna have the suspension.
Yeah.
Nor if it's the first, so you could say players involved in 2 tobacco drug possessions during a season are gone, or 3, what's your number?
Through the year.
Because
And
that
you're
would say,
taking the physical fighting out completely, because that was never, so.
So what we saying?
Players involved in a tobacco, drug use, possession, or paraphernalia,
It's the first time they're gonna be suspended no matter what.
right,
Yeah, which is.
which,
times 2
Through the year.
Yeah.
will be removed for the remainder of the season. That's fine. Is that what we're doing?
Does volleyball start in February?
so,
So are you saying if they have one day for one sport, one day for their son?
It's still. for discretion.
well, this already says any player suspended.
Yeah.
Third time is ineligible in any sport. So that, I mean, that covers any,
Right.
whatever is suspendable in fact is.
So we're just making the tobacco and paraphernalia. Very partially. The second. That's what we need them from the board.
Well, could it be covered if you put the any player suspended 2 times?
So if there's
Take
anyone who
out
proposed
tobacco,
page
whatever,
they're talking about as well.
Because ultimately tobacco and drug, you get suspended once anyway, right? It's not just. That's bullet 8 on 164. If you change the 3rd time to 2, whatever the offense is, if it's a second suspension, they can't do anything. They can't play anything for the remainder of the year, which would alleviate the. You can fight 3 times, but you can't vape twice. I mean, that's like,
That seems kind of.
yeah, it just, and that's.
So
kind
you're
of-
suggesting your second suspension, you're
If
done.
your second suspension, you're done,
Yeah.
take out the tobacco and drug, because if they get it once, there's your one time.
I agree.
Okay.
Great job, sorry, but you get another
Okay, so we're
chance.
removing
And
number
then
4.
4, and that's still, I mean.
Yeah.
That still
Okay.
gives kids grace for that once, but then covers any other issue.
I mean, if you're missing 10 school days of your sport,
Right, I know,
Your season's over anyway.
Which one are you reading?
but does that hold up with what you two do as far as suspension wise, like that will cover a drug or tobacco offense, but also other things, a fight or.
All the majors.
yes.
Did we take
So
so
are
out?
we doing, are we
I know, are
saying
we
that any
doing-
players
It's
suspended
this
in
one,
school
or are we
now
doing just the?
is 1 day times 1 week?
That's what I said, or are we
Can you
doing
read that?
the suspension
Yeah.
days plus 5?
So now we're looking at a whole different one now.
This is
what's in
the board packet.
It's when.
Well,
Okay.
there's 3 or.
There's,
Yeah.
yeah, so I compared the 2, page 157 and 164, and there's only 2 differences in bullet.
I don't have pages.
Okay.
Oh,
We don't
sorry,
get page numbers.
oh. That was easier to identify,
The one that says.
I think I have an understanding. I think we're looking at the one that I think I worked on this summer.
We have.
Yeah.
Which is the 1 day one.
Italicized.
It's the 1 day one.
So I'd like you to make.
I'm gonna make
No, we're
the
not
whole
doing
thing.
that. She's saying we're getting rid of the 3rd suspension. A second
third
suspension would be
So-
removal from.
All of
14.
163 is
I'm gonna-
correct.
Third
So
suspension
one-
is now the rules of the second.
Right,
suspension.
that's
all of
That's what.
163
that's what-
matches.
Right.
All of one. That equals, that matches all.
And that's gonna be
of
the 5, the 1 day,
Okay, I know nobody had one.
Okay, so you're keeping,
So
okay, so you're not keeping this one.
You have
is-
cut
Yes,
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
not.
Okay, good. So then all language for the next- So all we're doing is for
3 days would be 3 weeks.
We are
Saying
replacing
1 day is a week, right?
participation.
Am I wrong to think that? When they're looking at, where like, if you got suspended for 3 days, that's 3 days and 3 weeks of suspension,
Correct, that was the
But we're not.
original,
but you're not, you're acting.
okay, but that was the original recommendation that was not voted in August.
10 foot.
That makes sense?
Yeah, understood.
Because what came in was the
six.
number of days plus 5. Number of days,
Yeah.
days plus 10. That's what was voted in.
That's right, example.
That, so that's not voted, that is bullet number, what you voted
Right.
is bullet number. Bullet number. 5, 6, and 7 on page 157. Replace bullet number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on page 1.
Let's get pushed out whenever this is cleaned up.
Yeah, 1, 2.
Just asking. Get the students to sign that one.
You're in charge.
You can do ski
So
trips, I'll do
bullets-
this.
So bullets 5, 6, and 7 on page 57, 157 are replacing bullets 6 on 164. I didn't, and you're getting rid of. Yeah.
I thought we were only removing
I did too.
bullet 4
Yeah.
on page 164, and then on the last bullet, any player suspended instead of the third time, it would be a second class.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, okay, then the reverse is that. Bullet 4
So take it out.
replaces.
I'm just gonna read the participant, I'm gonna make a
Okay.
motion with the entire.
Is this live right now? Like, so like this is going to happen because this is being done right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
we need something.
So
before-
I need,
Okay.
I need to make sure.
Sarah, do you have 164?
We don't have page numbers,
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
so
The one that it
So
says.
guys, just for not confusion, is we just need one speaker at a time, because
Okay,
this is
so
what happened
when-
right in August.
So I would like to make a motion when they.
that's how we got to the other one.
So I would like to make a motion to revise the participation, and I'm gonna go through each bullet. So the first bullet would be that players must participate in PE during the school day in order to practice or play in a game on that same day. Players must attend school in order to practice or play later in the same day. Dentist or doctor's appointment can be an exception. Players with 3 unexcused practices may be dropped from the team. Mark Twain players who receive 3 after-school detentions within a season will be removed from the team for the remainder of the season. Copperopolis players who receive 3 infractions within a season will be removed from the team for the remainder of the season. Less infractions will be considered equal to an after-school detention at Mark Twain and a copper infraction. Any players suspended in school or outside of school will be ineligible to participate in practices and or games the assigned suspension days times a week. Example, 1 day suspension equals 1 day times 1 week, which is 6 total school days. Tournaments played on the weekends during the 6 school days are not allowed for participation. 3 day suspension times 3 weeks, 18 total school days, same as the above for any tournaments during the 18 days.
So you want that in there,
That's, yes.
okay?
Cause what, oh, sorry.
Any player with a second suspension will be ineligible to participate in the assigned suspension plus an additional. So, sorry, I'm gonna restart that. Any player suspended a second time will be ineligible to participate in any sport-related activity for the remainder of the school year. So the above one is moot after we changed it to 2. That's my motion. Did everybody,
Second.
Timothy? Is there any more discussion? I think we've discussed this, yeah. It's,
I tried to line it all out and
Yes.
put in, okay.
this is good. Timothy,
Or we have discussion first.
You second the motion.
you need another discussion?
Just be official, so we don't.
I did say discussion, I didn't hear anything.
Second.
Yeah, I think that discussion post and say ayes.
Scott?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Diane, aye. Motion passes 4 with 1 absent. Thank you, everyone, for the amount of time we took putting into
Thanks for
this.
all the input.
And we have 13 seconds to adjourn this before.
Oh,
you
I
do
know.
your 10 o'clock.
It's the next
Okay,
one. It's the
let's
next
see.
one.
To extend.
We, our next meeting is February 9th.
Oh.
At 5:30 will be held here at the district office board room in Angels Care.
Exactly.
Adjournment will be done by do I have a motion for adjournment? Do I have a second? Timothy Randall, Scott, Christie, aye. Myself, aye. Motion passes 4-1. Meeting is adjourned.
Could
I'll-
you please give your dates for your special meeting, to, do we want to schedule that?
How soon will we have it so we can go over it with kids?
I just need everything
and
out.
families?
I'm hoping tomorrow morning.
Cause we do have kids that'll be on the border.
We can answer.
Well,